G'day battlers and welcome to the Clash of the Casters. Now, for those that aren't aware what this tournament is, I have invited every Pokemon caster from the 2024 season, from North America, from Europe, from Latin America, and from the Oceanic region as well. So, shout out the Oceanic region. But essentially, I've gathered all of these casters, put them into this one tournament, into a 5-round Swiss setup, where they'll be playing in the Open Great League in the same meta that the World Championships is going to be using in just a couple of weeks' time. So, in addition to everyone sort of preparing for the World Championships in some sense, I suppose, there is also, just as a nifty little kicker, a $100 USD cash prize on the line as well for whoever comes out on top of this tournament. So, obviously, 5 rounds of Swiss is quite a lot of battles. So today we're going to be picking and choosing a little bit with a focus on rounds 1 to 3 of this tournament. We're sort of going to pick a variety of battles, trying to showcase as many casters as possible, a little bit of a variety across the board. And then when we get into the week 2 stream next weekend, we'll do a focus on the sort of the people who are performing at the top of the leaderboard, the very top of that rounds 4 and 5, those who have picked up the most match wins and such in these first 3 rounds that we're going to see today. So, with that said, I guess it comes to the important question that is raised, that if all of the Pokemon casters are in this tournament, they're competing, then who are we going to get to cast this tournament? But there's only one answer to that question. So allow me to introduce my co-casters for today. All 3 Pokemon World Champions for Pokemon Go. And here they are now. And as soon as I remember to click the unmute button, which I did remember this time, guys. So big shout out. But welcome in. It's Axon, ME Weedle, and Dancing Rob to the Clash of the Casters. I feel the temperature is rising already, guys.
Thanks for having us, man. This is going to be really exciting. We've seen all of these casters cast these tournaments. I want to see what they have in store for us. What is their read on the meta? And especially because we haven't had any tournaments since NAIC. What does the meta look like now after Gudra, after like all these different shifts that we've seen in the Open Great League just in GBL? What are they going to be running?
Yeah. It's definitely, it's a bit of a new, it's actually a really weird spot in that you're right. We've only seen one official Pokemon tournament in this brand new meta, NAIC, and that was like quite a while ago now. So we really don't have a lot of data in terms of what we're actually seeing being played at in tournaments like this. Of course, there are a few tournaments out there. I know Inadequance is hosting quite regular Open Great League tournaments. Inadequance, someone we might be seeing a little bit later today as well. But I think this does give us a bit of an insight into these casters have seen a lot of these battles, right? They're seeing tournaments all year round. They see the meta develop. They potentially watch more battles than 95% of us competitors that are sort of out here because they see so many of these streams. And so it's going to be interesting to see their insights as they jump into this tournament here. But for those that, we essentially don't really need introductions here, but we'll go through it anyway, just for good measure. And we'll start to my right-hand side, I guess, stage left, stage right. I don't even remember which one that actually is. But to my this way, at the very least, it's Axon. Welcome in. Do you want to give a little bit of an intro as to who you are? Not that your background should be able to tell the story.
Yeah, it's Axon. I am the 2023 Pokemon Go World Champion and an avid Pokemon Go competitor still. I'm still competing. I'm going to be competing here in 2024 in just a couple of weeks. I'm very excited for that, and I'm very excited to see all of you guys there.
Yeah, definitely keen to see you again in just a couple of weeks' time. But of course, we have someone else who will be competing at the 2024 World Championships directly below me. And that is ME Weedle. Weedle, give us a little bit of intro, who you are, your vast list of accolades standing at your doorstep.
Yeah, so I'm ME Weedle, and if it wasn't clear, I've qualified for the World Championships this year as well. I won the 2022 Senior Division World Championships when that was still a thing, and also the 2024 EUIC, which I'm quite proud of as well. So, yeah.
As you definitely should be, and potentially the only ever senior Pokemon Go World Championship. We'll obviously wait and see how that ends up going into the future as the game continues to grow. But in a similar ballpark to Yakovovich, as someone who holds that championship title of a tournament that we may never see return. Him obviously carrying the OCIC title. And of course, in that corner, we have someone else who's a bit of a champion in their own right, and that is Dancing Rob. Welcome in.
Yeah, I am Dancing Rob. I won the first ever Pokemon Go World Championship in 2022 in the Masters division. And yeah, I've been playing grassroots since 2019, enjoying those. I'm still playing in general, but for the 2024 World Championship now, I'll be in the background helping run the stream instead.
Yeah, which is really awesome to see, by the way. You know, I feel like you hit the peak. It's definitely cool to see. I've seen you helping with judging. I've been helping with the stream as well, and a few other tournaments leading up to the World Championships. But it's really cool to have a Pokemon Go World Champion helping out with the stream as well. But that brings us to this stream, right, where we have U3 World Championships and champions, I should say, and a lot of Pokemon casters that we're going to see some battles from. So, as I mentioned in the brief little intro, we've sort of just selecting a little bit of a smorgasbord, a little bit of a variety of battles out of this tournament. And so let's take a look at what we're going to be seeing today. So we've picked out 11 battles for you today, going through number 1 through number 11. Now, we've used their Twitter profile pictures. Some of them make it incredibly easy to know who it is. Thank you, HomeSliceHenry. But some of them, you may not be familiar with them from their Twitter profile picture. You know, if you haven't seen debbiepebbles profile pic before, you may not know who that is right there. So going through number 1, we have ZoeTwoDots versus LNDsAureo from the Latin America region. We then have HomeSliceHenry versus EwokPadawan. We have DeFi 250 versus Lundberger. In number 4, we have debbiepebble versus FishyLegs 2. Oceania versus Oceania. In number 5, we have Adelian versus NiteTimeClasher, who, for all intents and purposes, we're going to call an NA caster, even though, you know, he did technically have his debut on the European circuit. Similar fashion, we have number 6, ZoeTwoDots versus Thaliwi. Now, Zoe technically wasn't a caster, but my tournament, my rules. And so she was host of the EUIC stream 2024, and so she's been invited here as well. Obviously, thanks in part to my Oceanic region bias, of course, as well. Now, we then have number 7, we've got CalebPeng versus Inadequance. In number 8, we have Sophtoph versus No Mimi 15. We then have Pirate AlphaFeeb taking on EwokPadawan. Number 10, I don't know who this guy on the left is, but I'm reading my notes here, and it does say PvP Steve, whoever that may be, and he's going to be taking on TomahawkUK. And then very last battle of the stream, potentially a best for last situation here, we have Rise to Occasion versus Rocha Babyface. So some pretty cool battles, to say the least. Axon, I'll sort of start with you. Is there one battle in particular here that you're particularly keen to sort of see grace the stream today?
You can't make me just pick one here. There's so many. But if I have to be honest, the battle that I'm looking forward to the most is probably number 7, CalebPeng versus Inadequance. I think they're both two very strong competitors. We've seen them both compete at Play Pokemon tournaments. I really want to see what they've brought to this and what their battles are going to look like here.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most, how do I put this? One of the most resume-filling sort of matchups here, with obviously Inadequance taking out one regional first place this season, and then CalebPeng taking on a string of second place finishes. You know, maybe today's the day that we see him beat that second place curse and do a little bit better, but definitely a really hype one. What about you, Rob? Is there one battle in particular that you're sort of looking forward to seeing play out today?
I'd be curious to see either of number 3 or 8 to just see some girls crushing a competition on stream. That would be very hype.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And something that I should mention as well is that astute viewers may realize that we actually have 3 female on female battles here. Now, this wasn't intentional. I used a little bit of an algorithm to help me out, making sure that we could pair up, have as many unique casters on stream as possible. So sort of making sure that, for example, if you have Butters versus LNDsAureo in number 1, that you then sort of are able to cover all of the other casters without picking battles from 2-0 Butters or LNDsAureo. And I didn't realize it until when I was making this graphic yesterday, that we have ended up with 6 of the 7 women here facing off against each other. Complete coincidence, but definitely going to be cool to see some women gracing the screen. And of course, I'll be rooting for my homegirl at number 6. But Emmy Weedle, is there a battle in particular that you are looking forward to see from this lineup?
I mean, given that you're asking me this question, I think there's no other answer than number 10. I'm excited to see your battles, and Tomahawk is a good friend of mine as well, and I know that he likes cooking up some spicy stuff sometimes. So I'm excited to see what he's got in store for us as well.
Yeah, by pure coincidence, we've also seen a matchup of the two of the only battlers to ever run Wailmer in an official play Pokemon regional tournament. So I will say, unfortunately, only one of us was brave enough to run Wailmer in this particular tournament. But, the Wailmer Warriors are rising up. And actually, I should mention, ZoeTwoDots did run Wailmer in a regional one time as well. So shout out. We were sort of stacking the odds that one of us would find each other. But with that said, I mean, those are the battles. Here are our casters. And look, I'm pretty keen to sort of get this show on the road, start getting into these battles as we sort of approach some people that we sometimes don't get to see actually in the battler seat as often as we might like. Do these casters actually know what they're talking about when they watch all these battles? Let's go and find out. So we're actually going to pass it off to Dancing Rob and It's Axon, who are going to be casting the very first battle of the stream. So I'm going to throw it over to them for TzSpenx versus LNDsAureo, and let's get into it. Good luck, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, looks like we have a very interesting matchup here. As I was saying, Goodra, one of the newest additions here to the play Pokemon meta. It looks like both of these battlers are bringing it. Rob, what are you thinking about Goodra here in this meta? Do you like it? Do you not like it? How do you feel?
We weren't sure at first how many Goodras we should expect, but I think Goodra is a specifically interesting pick because not only we can run the new Thunder Punch, which gives us great coverage to things like Skarmory or just another lower energy move that might be able to clutch through some wins. But also you can still run Power Whip to maybe surprise a Whiscash and something like that. So I'm very curious to see how much Goodra action we're actually going to see at this matchup. What do you think? Who has the better Goodra matchup in here?
That's a good question. I know that TzSpenx, he's actually streamed quite a bit of Goodra content. His moveset is kind of up in the air here with what he's running. I don't know if he's running Aqua Tail, Thunder Punch. I've seen him on stream run Draco Meteor, Power Whip, basically every moveset you can imagine. So it's really going to come down to if he's running an interesting moveset or just like the standard Aqua Tail and Thunder Punch. And it looks like the Registeel on Butter's side also is a Pokemon I want to kind of note. It's not the most common pick, but it is probably his best answer to the opposing Goodra here, and also can hardwall the Lickitung, hardwall the Skarmory. And TzSpenx, he's known for running Spicy. He has Triple Shadow here with the Poliwrath, with the Shadow Sableye, and with that Shadow Quagsire as well. So even though it is generally a spicier team, he actually does have some meta picks as well. It's going to be really interesting to see how he plays this out here. And I think that it's going to be a very fun matchup to see these two Goodra users end up fighting each other here.
I agree. These teams feel somewhat similar on first glance. Both have a fighter, both have Goodra, both have a steel type, both have some neutral picks, but both have Shadow Quagsire. So I'm very curious to see who of those top competitors can bring the win in this round.
I'd say with that, let's get on to the battles here. Eventually.
Eventually. There we go. We have some Goodra action from TzSpenx, and we'll soon find out the moveset is actually Aqua Tail Thunder Punch, so no crazy spike moveset from TzSpenx so far.
Yeah, it's good to know here, because now we know that both of these Goodras are going to be throwing only resisted charge moves at each other. It's going to be strictly the fast attacks that are going to do a lot of damage. With that said, Aqua Tail coming through and getting shielded here. Switch advantage might be critical this game.
Interesting from Butters to stay in this matchup, but what do you think? Does Butters need switch advantage in this one?
I think I like that he takes shield advantage. He has double shadows in the back, and Shadow Sableye, even into Lickitung, isn't that bad with a bit of energy, a bit of shield advantage, and he gets a farm down with his Shadow Poliwrath, which might have a lot of play just getting scalded, even into that Charger Bug.
I agree. I'm not the biggest fan of Charger Bug myself, but in TzSpenx team, it feels very strong, especially when it avoids the Quagsire. And I think this one will be a close game now.
Yeah, Charger Bug, it's a very inflexible Pokemon just with that 4-turn fast attack, but we can see that really, unless you avoid like the Quagsire, it has a lot of play here just in the general team. Even against Goodra, you have the X-Scissors. We're seeing the Shadow Sableye now play out into the Lickitung, though. It's a matchup that you'd expect the normal type to be in a very good spot against, But you can see that these foul plays, they're doing a lot of damage because we are Shadow, these Shadow Claws as well, stripping through its health, putting it close to 2-shot range at this point.
Yeah, this matchup is, no matter if you play the regular or the Shadow Sableye, closer than you would naturally expect, especially since the addition of XL Lickitung a few years back.
Yeah, I think as long as you shield the Power Whips, you can actually start flipping the 2-shield matchup here. And going down shields is a little bit scary for Butters, in my opinion, because there is that Charge Bug in the back that could end up landing a move. But I love that farm down. He gets the snipe down with Poliwrath.
Me too.
Can he get a shield with this Scald and have that foul play in the back?
You might even want to bait in this situation, which is what I would have loved to see, but I guess that's the call for that.
It goes through.
Oh my, it goes through.
He can punch down the Charge Bug here, and Butters takes the win on game number 1. That was incredible,
is a great
honestly.
call, but yeah, maybe I would have played it differently, but yeah, Butters clearly knew that situation and how to clutch out that win in that particular game. Amazing.
Yeah, he knew switch advantage this game might not be super important because setting up his shadows for a sweep in the back really did pay off. Getting a shield with a resisted attack against like a Goodra, like the Aquatail getting shielded, I think that was critical for Butters winning that game. And Shadow Sableye, we just saw how powerful it is. It basically dealt with that Lickitung. It set up the Poliwrath here to sweep. And I think that was just a masterfully played game here by Butters. You said you might have baited that Icy Wind. That could have maybe even been a lose condition if that was called. It would have been interesting to see like how different people would have played that one out. Because calling a no-shield and not Scald, it is risky for Oreo. But I think that was the play he had to make. And it was a very tight endgame there. I'm really happy we were able to see that in our very first match of the day.
Especially the farm down of the Lickitung just in time before the Power Whip was reached was a masterful play by the Butters, and I'm very curious to see how these players adapt in game 2 now.
Yeah, so am I. I'd say let's get a look into game number 2 and see what the adjustments are. Okay, Lickitung into Goodra. Honestly, I'd rather be the Lickitung here, but Goodra can do a lot of work, and the Shadow Sableye in the back now does get to avoid this.
This is now where Butters misses this Dracomedia Goodra that he was playing on stream before.
That is true. It looks like we are restarting the battle a little bit or something here. But what I'm seeing in the back line is the Poliwrath from 2-0 Butters. It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable into an Annihilate plus a Charge Bug here. What this means is switch advantage is not important. Butters wants to get shields down. I don't know if he can using the Goodra here into this Lickitung.
Once again, the farm down by Poliwrath might be a good play for Butters, though, to set up the energy from Poliwrath that goes unresisted in the whole backline of Oreo. So I'm curious to see how these players play out that matchup right now.
Yeah, stripping 1 shield here in the lead would have been nice, but he doesn't quite get that. And it looks like Oreo makes the nice play. He realizes that he's so strong against that Poliwrath in the back. Don't give him that farm down. Come into that Charger Bug and start spamming out these moves once this Shadow Sableye comes in. I think at this point that Poliwrath is in a very tricky spot here. Butters is going to have to start shielding first, and he's never going to be able to get a shield advantage from this matchup because of how quick Charger Bug is to these charge moves.
At this point, it looks very good for Oreo by making that read. And yeah, that charge up proves how strong it is, especially in these neutral shield scenarios where you can just outbulk while still spam these axe scissors and do some decent wall switch damage here.
Yeah, not just outbulk, but also outpace. Shadow Sableye, I think, is kind of the common consensus now that it's a little bit slower than most of the meta. If you don't get to a move in about 10 turns or less, it's kind of considered slow now. So being so slow and also being down energy because this Charge Bug did swap in first, it's going to make this matchup really tough. And now this Charge Bug just knocks out the Shadow Sableye. There's still a Charge Bug and an Annihilate, and I guess a Lickitung too, for this Shadow Poliwrath to deal with. I don't know if it's going to be enough here. I think at this point, you probably just want to swap into your Annihilate. Don't give them the possibility of a farm down, but maybe you're going to just try to get the discharge off here. Looks like they swap in a little bit late, but that's totally fine too. I think Annihilate easily survives a move. You're almost at another attack on Charger Bug. I think at this point, Oreo should have this game locked up.
Great call by Oreo as well to bring the Annihilate and not the Goodra again, which might have been more problematic against the Poliwrath on the back now. But with the Annihilate, that looks much better, and I'm pretty sure the Charger Bug should get to a move still. So
I think it does, but if the counter down somehow happens here, Butters might have found his way out of this matchup. Honestly, I'm surprised he was able to take care of the backline as well as he has so far. It was a very bad matchup, but the exit... This doesn't knock out, though. This is resisted.
Yeah, this will be very close at this point.
Yeah,
but we
can
might
get the
see a
counter down
lick
before a
down
Volt
from.
Switch? Oh, no, we
No.
get the Simul KO there. That was such a close endgame. I think he could have reached for the discharge there to guarantee the win, but it was a very close endgame. Throwing the X-Scissor to get the guaranteed damage off, and then getting the Volt Switch down just barely was able to take LNDsAureo game number 2.
Very well adapted by Oreo by bringing in the Annihilate just to survive a bit more of a move from Poliwrath as well. And Charjabug showing once again why it's the favorite of so many people in recent time, especially at the start of the season as well. So I'm curious to see. Sorry.
After game 1, with how much work Shadow Sableye put in, I really do love that adaptation of the Annihilate. You can't be scared of the Sableye, bringing in those things that can just instantly win you the game by being able to align it into the Poliwrath, which also could have put in a lot of work against this team. We have the Quagsire that gets walled by the Poliwrath. We have the Skarmory, the Lickitung, and the Goodra, all that are very unfavorable matchups, although they do have a bit of play with all super effective damage. But having those 2 hard answers to that Poliwrath really did secure it for LNDsAureo, and I really do love that adaptation he made.
Yeah, especially the Annihilate feels strong on Oreo's side because the Cresselia is hard to play from Butter's side with the Skarmory and the Charjabug, and even the Lickitung on Oreo's team. So I'm curious to see Butter's adaptation now and what he thinks he might bring. We might want to see the Shadow Quagsire, for example, to take care of the Charjabug.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see this decisive game 3, what these battlers will lock in. It is going to be, there is the Shadow Quagsire, but into the Goodra. Not the best lead, but this is kind of the mirror of the first game, although the exact opposite, because obviously Oreo, I think, safe swapped the first time. This time it is Butters who had to swap out of that lead matchup, but he does get to the charge move first. He gets the Aqua Tail off before Oreo does. What is the decision? It's a no shield against this Aqua Tail.
And actually saving the move for later, I suppose. It's not the most useful move into the Quagsire itself, but also just saving a little bit of HP for potential Dragon Breath damage in the end game might be impactful. And Lickitung can definitely take care of all the energy and go for an aggressive lick down on Butter's Goodra here.
This lick down is so massive. Butters did not bring a single hard answer to a Lickitung here. His backline can deal well with it when it's, maybe up energy with the Quagsire, up energy with the Sableye, but the Lickitung is up energy. It might be down health, but it has a body slam. It has actually 2 body slams, almost 2 power whips at this point loaded. I think this is going to be really tough for Butters to overcome, but I agree with this play. Come in with the Sableye, force power whips out, and try to knock this out with Shadow Claws plus foul plays.
I also like the read that Butter makes, that he's expecting the Charjabug in the back again, and knowing that it is it is a good play to save the Quagsire with the Stonehenge for the Charjabug in the back, and especially because the Goodra is already low, that might give him a win con in the end, depending how this matchup goes. He correctly shields up the second power whip as well, at least.
Yeah, shielding these 2 power whips is absolutely massive for him, but he doesn't opt to throw the move. Is he going to get... Oh, no! He's going to swap into a power whip here, and the Quagsire is going to enter the battle, and it's going to leave just as soon as it came in here. That is not looking good for us now. We still have a move, I think, on that Goodra. The Charjabug has not even entered the battle yet, and we have to throw a move to knock out this Lickitung. I think at this point, Butters is not going to be able to come back from this. I think LNDsAureo is going to be able to take game number 3 here.
Maybe Butters was expecting the Annihilate in the end and not the Charjabug. But yeah, at this point, it is very unfortunate for Butters, because just the sheer bulk of the coverage of Lickitung was too much for this game for him.
Yeah, I mean, Butters does have answers to Lickitung with his team, but he did not bring the Registeel, he did not bring the Shadow Poliwrath. He knew those were RPS options, so he chose his 3 most flexible picks. Unfortunately, the Lickitung is so flexible into this team, and in the end, I don't even think the Charjabug was necessary. It was just a 2-man show there that game. GG's to Oreo, and he honestly played that so well. Great adjustments by him after taking an early game number 1 loss, coming back getting a 2-0 sweep against 2-0 Butters.
I totally agree, especially making these reads by bringing Lickitung and the Guro, which might have been problematic if Butters brought the Registeel instead, but making sure to scare these picks away with the Annihilate, for example, as well. We saw some great team calls and also some great plays by Oreo.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how like this format works. Where if Butters has lost this one, is he still in the running for a top cut? I'd assume so with how many rounds there are going to be. So this might not be the end of Butters. This might not be the end of Oreo. Well, it definitely is not the end of Oreo. He won this one, so congratulations to him. And I hope we get to see more of Butters. I love his playstyle. I always love to see what his teams are. So great job to both of these battlers. Fantastic games. And let's pass it off here to the next battle with PvP Steve and Emmy Weedle.
Yeah, thanks, Axon and Rob. Now, I've brought it to this screen essentially just so that the way I've set this thing up, if I go straight into the battles, then it'll actually come up with that same score. And I didn't want to spook everyone into thinking that we were going to have an instant 2-1 result spoiled. So essentially, we only came here so I could set the score back to 0-0. But it does mean that we can at least see here that we are going to be jumping into round number 2, HomeSliceHenry versus TzSpenx. North America versus Latin America for the second battle in a row. But Emmy Weedle, we've got the teams up on screen. HomeSliceHenry on the left with what I believe is a water gun lantern and an ice beam hydro cannon for alligator. And TzSpenx, I think they're all quite standard Pokemon, and I'm pretty sure that Azumarill, going off of memory from when I looked about 10 minutes ago, was ice beam play rough. Now, this was open team sheet, us run the same way as the play Pokemon tournaments. But Weedle, when you sort of look at these two teams, what are you seeing? Oh, it looks like you're muted on the on the Video Ninja. Oh, I still can't hear you. We may be experiencing technical difficulties. I don't think I have anything muted on my end. I'm not sure if it's I mean, I know you've got two different mute buttons, Weedle. One on the mic and one on the Video Ninja. But I think that we'll just go for a backup plan, and I'm gonna unmute Discord. Okay, Weedle, can I hear you now?
Yeah, sorry.
Yep, I can hear you now.
Yeah, the first. Okay, good. That's weird. Sorry. The first thing that stands out to me is actually the Shadow Whiscat. I don't think I've seen any quite recently, to be fair, in any kind of Show 6 tournaments or even in GBL. So I think that's something that's quite interesting to see. And that against then the non-Shadow for Alligator that HomeSliceHenry has brought. We usually see the Shadow variant. I know Inadequance mentioned that he thinks the non-Shadow variant is not usable at all. So I'd like to see what Henry's gonna cook with that.
Yeah, I think HomeSliceHenry is definitely someone who enjoys a bit of cooking in their spare time when it comes to Pokemon Go PvP. And so I am also pretty interested to see if that Feraligatr can sort of bring dividends. I do feel like it's a pretty decent Pokemon into quite a lot of Spenx's team. Obviously, it's got some like relatively decent answers, especially because it is running, Hydro Cannon, Ice Beam. You don't really have anything left to throw it in Azumarill, for example. And so, and maybe HomeSliceHenry has built their team specifically around the Feraligatr, because you've got Cresselia as an answer to Azumarill. You have Double Electric with Lantern and Charger Bug as an answer to Azumarill. So you have quite a bit of, and even Vigoroth isn't actually that bad into Azumarill either. So I sort of wonder if HomeSliceHenry is potentially trying to dissuade their opponent from actually running the Pokemon that could be quite decent into the Feraligatr. But I don't know. If you had to make a call here, about what lead we might see here, Weedle, what would you say?
Ooh, that's tough. I think a Vigoroth lead mirror is not completely unreasonable, because there's no Annihilates on either side, right? So Vigoroth wins the zeros against Shadow Gligar as well. So grabbing a shield advantage for Alligator, that might be something that Henry might opt to do. And on Spenx's side as well, if he can catch that for Alligator lead with the Vigoroth farming up a lot of energy to throw against something later, or also winning the series against his Shadow Gligar and giving a shield advantage to the Whiscat, that could potentially spell danger for HomeSliceHenry.
Yeah, look, I'll see if your prediction is right. I know Vigoroth used to be quite a bit of a Pokemon that was only used as a safe swap when it was first released back in 2019 as a PvP powerhouse. in the Silver Arena Jungle Cup is when it sort of first saw some priority, but it's definitely sort of moved a little bit into that safe lead in the same vein. So let's jump into battle number 1, see if we do see a Vigoroth lead matchup, and we have actually a much worse scenario for TzSpenx. We have a Lantern into Skarmory, and so we see the quick swap into the Vigoroth, safe swap, and now not swapping into HomeSliceHenry's own Vigoroth, we have the swap into Cresselia. Now, how does this matchup go, Weedle, with Vigoroth having so much energy in the bank?
Yeah, so something I'd like to mention is the Vigoroth did get a big energy lead, but HomeSliceHenry's actually played it well. He's chipped it with some water gun damage to get it into potentially double grass knot range. So I really like that play from HomeSliceHenry, but he might have accidentally given it just slightly too much of an energy lead that it might be able to outpace to a few moves and potentially give up some shields to actually get switch advantage with the Vigoroth.
Yeah, Vigoroth does body slam spam the best, and so it's going to have quite a bit of action being thrown Cresselia's way. It's going to be a pretty tight one, I think. This body slam won't be enough to KO the Cresselia, but one more body slam will do it. And so TzSpenx sort of has a decision here to make. Do you burn the Protect Shield on the Grass Knot? And it looks like the answer is yes. And I think that because of the pacing of Vigoroth versus Cresselia, Vigoroth is going to barely get to this body slam before the Grass Knot. And so now HomeSliceHenry is actually going to have to make the same call. Do I want the switch advantage? Do I want that Lantern to just RPS into that Skarmory again? And HomeSliceHenry actually says no. They let it go and bring in their own Vigoroth to get a full body slam of farm. That is devastating, Weedle.
Yeah, that is really massive that he doesn't have to give up a shield there and can keep both shields for the Vigoroth against a team that, as mentioned before, does not have an Annihilate to stoke any of the or all of the body slam, rock slide damage, counter damage. So this Vigoroth could potentially sweep the Skarmory, land a body slam against the Whiscash, and his Lantern could finish it off. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the problem here is, like, there's no doubt in my mind that HomeSliceHenry can deal with this Skarmory, but you have to look at the back line of TzSpenx, who is holding that Shadow Whiscash in the back. Now, Shadow Whiscash, not exactly a friend of Lantern. Now, Watergun Lantern does have a bit of an okay time against Shadow Whiscash, but depending on how much Mud Bomb spammage you end up with, it can really quite hurt that Lantern. And so now we've got the Rock Slide going through, taking out the Skarmory, and now Vigoroth is just going to try and get as much damage onto this Whiscash as possible, gets the body slam before getting KO'd, and the question now becomes, Weedle, is this enough for Lantern to be able to seal the deal against that Shadow Whiscash?
Yeah, we know Shadow Mud Bombs do a lot, but when the Lantern's at full health and has got a shield to hide behind as well, I'm not sure this is going to end well for the Whiscash, sadly.
Yeah, to be honest, I'd completely missed that there was still a shield in play, which makes it a little bit tough for that Lantern. And HomeSliceHenry, even letting that Mud Bomb come through, just to sort of, show the domination, I guess, of this very first battle. But really, really well played from HomeSliceHenry. Obviously, TzSpenx was in a pretty hard countered lead scenario, but I think that one important thing that this shows, Weedle, is that it's not always about hard RPS. It's not about just landing the right Pokemon in the right spot. When you see your Lantern into the Skarmory, your brain doesn't have to go, I need to invest all of my shields to win this switch advantage so I can get back to that matchup because I know it is so good. Now, in this case, that might have still actually ended up with a victory because it was that Shadow Whiscash in the back. But, sometimes you don't know what's in the back. Obviously, us as casters, we can sort of see both sides at once. But as you well know, Weedle, when you're in that competitor spot, it's a little bit tougher to try and predict what is going on in the back. And so I think HomeSliceHenry played it really well in identifying what could happen and had their best win con.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's not all about the RPS, as you said before. He played well with the Lantern into the Vigoroth safe swap, chipping to keep the switch or grab a shield advantage. But at this point, do you think Spenx is going to risk running the Skarmory again and landing it on one of those two electric types? Or do you think he's going to switch it up a bit?
Yeah, it's a tough call, right? Because you know that Skarmory actually looks really good on the whole into HomeSliceHenry's team, as long as you can avoid one of those electric type leads. And so you've sort of got that, 66% chance, 67% chance of having a pretty decent time, especially if you end up against one of those Cresselia or the Gligar, where you have an especially good matchup as the Skarmory. But the Pokemon can be quite polarizing at times, and Skarmory is definitely one of those Pokemon that can really get in a good spot or get in a bad spot. So to be honest, I actually still expect TzSpenx to keep the Skarmory in their lineup, but I do sort of feel like we might see it sort of maybe pushed to the back a little bit. Maybe we go to what you called before, Weedle, and bring in that Vigoroth lead scenario. But look, let's jump into game number 2, HomeSliceHenry versus TzSpenx, and see if we can get TzSpenx back on the board. Game number 2, we have the Shadow Gligar into the Charger Bug. A bit of still not a great matchup, and so we see TzSpenx go for the exact same strategy of swapping into that Vigoroth as the safe swap. And so now HomeSliceHenry is sort of, we might see them go for a similar strategy, where they go for a little bit of a chip, and then can potentially swap into another Pokemon. This time, going to go back to that Cresselia. It's the same strategy, Weedle, but this time, even less health and even less energy on that Vigoroth.
Yeah, and even though this isn't looking too great for Spanx at the moment, we see that Shadow Whiscash in the back, and he successfully baited out the Cresselia. Maybe HomeSliceHenry not reading the Shadow Whiscash, or just thinks that he can win the game with the Cresselia anyway, but perhaps he's given his opponent a chance to potentially 2-shield sweep with a Shadow Whiscash.
Yeah, it's really, what TzSpenx potentially has to hope for here. Because, I really feel like, actually we get one last minute body slam off from the Vigoroth. Just going to weaken down this Cresselia a little bit more. But again, Cresselia going to win switch advantage here. So we are in a bit of a different situation than the previous. But now that Charge Bug can come straight in. HomeSliceHenry can throw a Moonblast here. And obviously there is that 1 in 10 chance that we can see a debuff coming through. But this is going to do quite a bit of damage on its own, taking Charge Bug down to about half health. No debuff this time. But Cresselia actually getting to a second Moonblast. This is still not going to KO the Charge Bug. It's going to bring it really, really low. And so I think sort of what you said before, Weedle is right, is that we're really heading towards a situation where it is all going to be on this Shadow Whiscash to try and take out both Pokemon. And to be honest, with its pacing, I think we need to see at least one Mud Bomb bait at some point go through.
Yeah, although even with a Mud Bomb bait, those wing attacks plus an aerial ace really add up. You might need to hope for a debuff instead, or that HomeSliceHenry makes a bold call and tries to let go a Mud Bomb.
Oh,
but we see the Scald come through. It gets a debuff. Okay, so that's quite nice for TzSpenx. HomeSliceHenry, he's just going to go straight for the aerial aces. He knows that he just needs the minimal chip damage, the fast aerial aces to win this game. Oh my. Oh no, he catches. That is a great catch from HomeSliceHenry, and I think he's got this in the bag now.
Yeah, look, you said that HomeSliceHenry needed to make some massive blunder, or TzSpenx needed to get incredibly lucky to be able to pull out a win here. And unfortunately, HomeSliceHenry has played incredibly well and has perfectly managed that swap, catching the huge energy Scald from that Whiscash into the Lantern. I don't even think it debuffed. And so Lantern handily able to throw that Surf, KO the Whiscash. Doesn't quite get to Water Gun down the Charge Bug, but when you're a Gligar, you've got a shield in tow. You could literally shield this, you could actually no shield as well. HomeSliceHenry, clearly a fan of that and keeping that shield as a flex, trying to keep it for the next game. But it turns out he didn't even need it for this game either, and manages the big 2-0 against TzSpenx. Really well played, but HomeSliceHenry actually in the Twitch chat as well and said, yeah, unfortunately, TzSpenx just really doesn't have an answer for the Lantern, which is, quite true when you're putting all of your chips onto that Whiscash.
Yeah, I think he made the right call, right? Knowing that the Lantern and Vigoroth is coming, his best response, the Charge Bug and the Whiscash. But sadly, that Charge Bug didn't really see what it was hoping to see, namely the Gligar. So he really had to try his best to play around it. He made it close. He baited out the Cresselia successfully with the Vigoroth and tried sweeping with the Whiscash. So that was very well played by TzSpenx as well. But Henry catching the Scold on the lantern. That was a nasty catch, and secured his 2-0 win.
Yeah, exactly right. And look, HomeSliceHenry, I feel like potentially one of the favorites going into this tournament. Not someone that's seen a lot of play on the Play Pokemon circuit, but someone who's really demonstrated their skill out in the the Go Battle League, obviously, but then also in a little bit of grassroots here or there. So definitely a top battler that could have been going into this. And so I think now we're going to pass it over into the third set of battles, over to Axon and Dancing Rob, where we're going to see the first of the Girls That PvP grudge matches in DeFi 250 versus Lundberger. And we're going to do an advance this time. I'm just going to set the score back to 0. But over to you guys.
Thank you,
Thank
Steve.
you so much, Steve. Yeah, that was an incredible battle there. Man, okay, Robbie, you go.
Okay, we think too similarly. I wanted to just pull out a quick fun fact and let you know that HomeSliceHenry's real name is not Henry. I was shocked to hear that.
Absolutely scammed here. It doesn't even matter what his name is, though. He got a quick 2-0. He got catches. Incredible battle. But now we have 2 more incredible battlers here in front of us. DeFi versus Lundberger, both with relatively spicy teams. The first fire types, I believe, of this tournament showing up. And they both have a different one here with the Talonflame and the Skeletor. Rob, which one of these fire types do you think is going to have more play here this game?
That's a very good question. I recently enjoyed playing Skeletor myself. I feel like, especially against Azumarill, that matchup is not as bad as you would typically think, just because the charge move that Azumarill usually runs, being Ice Beam and Play Rough, are both resisted by the Skeletor. And just the coverage of Disarming Voice and Shadow Ball is pretty nice in general.
Yeah, I agree with that, because like if you look on the side of DeFi, she has that Feraligatr, that Clodsire, both Pokemon that have a lot of pressure against Talonflame, and then you also have a lot of neutral play with Chargebug, with Vigoroth, Mandibuzz. I don't know if we're going to see too much Talonflame from Lundberger, but that Skeletor, that coverage is looking very nice. Clodsire as well. It's a Pokemon that normally it's not the most common pick, but it is a decent core breaker here. It beats the Talonflame, the Registeel, the Chargebug, has a lot of play into Azu, a lot of play into Umbreon. It's just that Shadow Gligar that's going to try to keep this Clodsire at bay.
I'd be also very interested in some of these movesets, depending on the Clodsire moveset. It might be even more advantageous against the Azumarill. I'm usually a fan of Crunch Feraligatr, for example, but it might have Ice Beam as well.
Yeah, that's true. And also Crunch Chargebug is an option. I've seen some people run it. It has more play into Gligar if it is running Crunch there, but I don't think that's a super common moveset. It's more just for the coverage. And it looks like we do have the movesets on the side here. It is going to be the Azu running the Ice Beam Play Rough moveset, Incinerate, Flame Charge, Fly for Talonflame, and the standard Chargebug moveset here, I believe, for Lundberger. And then DeFi, the movesets are going to be Crunch on that Feraligatr, and I believe it's also going to be standard everything else, the Clodsire running Mudshot, Stone Edge, Earthquake.
Interesting. I recently saw, I think it was the Gengar Life playing a lot with Water Pulse Clodsire, which I found very interesting. And it makes the Gligar matchup actually way better. But I'm also taking standard moveset, especially good against the
really
Registeel.
Interesting. Water Pulse is not the most common move, but giving it coverage could be kind of fun. But here we do have that Stone Edge. I think we can get in these battles to see what these 2 trainers are going to bring here to game number 1.
Sounds good.
All right, very neutral lead matchup here. We
actually do see the Talonflame by Lundberger.
Yeah, very bold call if you ask me. This Vigoroth does have a lot of neutral play into it. Honestly, that Chargebug does like to avoid this. Chargebug in the backline, if you're looking at it, it looks so strong. I think there's an Umbreon and an Azumarill there for Lundberger. So if this Vigoroth can deal with this Talonflame, I think that is going to be a very favorable matchup here for DeFi.
Also a great bait by DeFi here. That is very sad to see. I have to favor Lundberger a bit in this matchup, just for my general European bias. So you can be biased towards DeFi instead.
Hey, fair enough, fair enough. But we do see the double shield. Did the Vigoroth no shield that? Is this a 2 shield to 0 advantage here? I think it is. It is. That is crazy. This is going to mean now Chargebug is set up for a sweep, I think. You can absorb the energy with this Feraligatr. Probably shield. Maybe you have to shield twice, actually. I forgot how much energy this Talonflame has. It does have 2 flies, and they did buff their attack. You might be able to survive one, but I don't think you're going to want to no-shield this and just let your Feraligatr go.
Honestly, I don't mind that play by Lundberger just because the energy of the Talonflame was useful in against every single Pokemon. So I don't mind this, but also like going into Umbreon, just having a safe option and seeing whether you can set up a sweep for your Talonflame again or something else. The Azumarill is actually a pretty nice play.
Yeah, incredibly smart bait out here, swapping into this Umbreon to try to bait out something like this Charjabug. I was saying at the start that I didn't know if we'd see much Talonflame, but looking at it, if you set up this Talonflame, there is nothing that resists both fire and flying. Honestly, the only thing that resists fire is going to be this Skeledirge, obviously, and then that Feraligatr. Everything else doesn't want to take Incinerates, it doesn't want to take Flies, so setting up this Talonflame might actually have quite a bit of play here into DeFi. And we also see this Umbreon almost taking out this Charjabug at this point too. What you'd think would be a favorable matchup, Umbreon is just so spammy, it can take a shield from this Charjabug.
Especially because Umbreon is so bulky as well, so you definitely need a few charge moves. This Axis might not even KO, but yeah, it's not getting to another move. But now this Charjabug is actually a bit scary, especially since Lundberger decides not to throw the move.
Yeah, I think now that if this Charjabug can get to a discharge, I think there's a really good chance DeFi could win this game. Looks like they're not going to take the risk that they get farmed down just yet. Feraligatr is still a very nice matchup into this Azu. With that said, is this in play rough range plus farm down? If you can farm down the Skater, get a move against that Charjabug, you won't even have to worry about it getting to another discharge in the back.
I think it will be very close, especially because we have a normal Gator as well in here and not a Shadow one. This might be a bit tough, but maybe with a Ice Beam additionally and then another one, we'll see how close it gets. I think that game is still pretty open.
Yeah, we have to keep in mind, Feraligatr, it is really squishy when it's the Shadow variant, but it's still not necessarily bulky as the non-Shadow. This Azu is getting very chipped down here, but we do get to this play rough. Now, we have a lot of energy on this Azu. How much damage is this play rough going to be able to do here to the Skater? It does a ton. I don't know if that's farm down range, though, and we're almost at the next Hydro. I think we're going to be able to knock them out with this Hydro Cannon, and it looks like DeFi is able to take the game here with the Feraligatr in the back.
Very close end game, but well played by both battlers, and what a close game one. What do you think will happen
Lundberger reading
now?
that Charjabug backline was so smart, trying to bait it out, keep the Talonflame alive. I think she had a move left over on that Talonflame, right?
I think so, yeah. She decided not to throw in this moment, which
it could have ended up mattering. Because if you just got like one Incinerate off against that Feraligatr, that might have been enough to flip it and make it so you do get the knockout with that play rough. It's just those like small margins here that were able to make or break game number one. Very close match. No RPS, luckily. It was a very interesting backline as well, baiting out that Charjabug with the Umbreon, showing how bulky Umbreon is, even though it's not quite as common in the play Pokemon meta right now.
What adaptation would you like to see on either side? I feel like the Pokemon they brought were already pretty strong and pretty neutral against each other, so I could see the case where just the alignment might be swapped a little bit, or maybe even the same teams. But also, I'm very up for some adaptation. For example, bringing the Clodsire on DeFi East side, maybe baiting out their Azumarill in some way. I think there's a couple of plays that can be made.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the Shadow Gligar as well looks pretty safe for Lundberger in general. It really does only has to watch out for that Feraligatr being up energy. If you safe swap your Gligar here, it is so safe. If you're ever in a bad spot, Gligar up energy can put in a ton of work against this entire team. And I think Vigoroth plus Charjabug was the lead. Like, it was Vigoroth lead with Charjabug in the back for DeFi. That would have been a decent core breaker for that team. I think Shadow Gligar might make an appearance here in game number 2.
Yeah. I'd be very curious to see it. We should have game 2 in any second here.
Hey, there it is, but unfortunately met into the Feraligatr.
I do like the Skeledirge in the back from DeFi, though. I think it will be very close. Actually, looks trying to make a catch here, but is unsuccessful, and we have a similar situation like in game 1 with Umbreon baiting out the Charjabug right now, with the Azumarill in the back against the Fire type. And this is the situation that I will be very curious how it will play out, because up shields, Azumarill versus Feraligatr is pretty strong, but especially down shields, Skeledirge can definitely keep up with the Azumarills, and it's more neutral than you think.
Yeah, it looks like Lundberger went for basically the same exact strategy from game 1, but realized that instead of having Talonflame as the middle Pokemon to kind of, destroy this charge bug, use that Shadow Gligar, get a nice farm down here. And even though it was that Feraligatr into the Gligar, if you can set up a good farm down here in the middle game, force him to throw energy here, we might still be in a decent spot. We actually get this foul play off before an X-Scissor is thrown. I'm sure that an X-Scissor might not have knocked out. That's probably why DeFi didn't throw the energy here. But they do have to shield first. Charjabug needing to shield against this Dark type. That is terrible now for DeFi. If you get a farm down against this with this Gligar, Gligar's energy is going to do so much work this game.
Especially since the Shadow Gligar doesn't have to shield at all against the Charjabug. This was a very good play by Lundberger here.
Yeah, now you have shield advantage for both this Gligar and that Azumarill, both Pokemon that have a lot of play into the remainder of Pokemon that DeFi has, or that that DeFi has here. So we'll have to see if this Gligar is going to be able to make the sweep. Another X-Scissor does come through it. It's going to put it kind of low. Maybe you want to come into into Skeletor rather, into this Gligar at this point. You don't have a lot of fast move pressure with your Feraligatr. Do you want to try to incinerate this down? But no, going for the guaranteed play, going for the CMP on this Hydro Cannon, and we do see a shield from the Gligar.
I would have also loved to see a catch on Lundberger's side. That is just me liking catches in general. I think the way they play it out is a pretty safe play, as you mentioned, and especially since the Gligar already has 2 moves and the Feraligatr is pretty close. I'm curious how this will play out now.
Yeah, it looks like we're going for the air releases, not going for the digs here. I personally might have gone for dig to try to go for like a shield and farm down after landing one, but the 2 air releases just guarantee you get the 2 moves off first. You're going to guarantee shield advantage and force this Gator to throw energy. I honestly would probably shield this. How are you going to take out this Gator otherwise? Like if you let this go, yeah, I do love this shield. Are we going to see a catch with this air release onto that Skeletor? No, the air release does land into the Gator, and it's going to be Azumarill into Skeletor in the back.
So now we are going to see the matchup that I was expecting.
Yeah, as you were saying, the charge moves from Azu are all resisted here. Skeletor not exactly in the worst spot, but it does have a lot of work to do here. We get a bubble through there. I think that might have been on somewhat suboptimal timing here. We can get as much damage to these bubbles as possible, put it into range potentially where 2 Play Roughs could knock out. But as you can see, that Shadow Ball, it nearly is going to 2-shot this Skeletor, or this Azu from the Skeletor at this point. If we can't get this 2-shot, Skeletor might be able to flip this matchup, incinerate down the Gligar, and take game number 2.
This will be very close for sure. We do see the Shadow Ball landing out should be barely enough to KO at this point.
Oh, it doesn't. Not. If Fast Moves can knock out the Skeletor, it's going to be so close. 2 wing attacks. Can they knock out the Skeletor before the Incinerate takes out the Gligar? 1, 2, and the Skeletor. Ooh.
And it is a tie, actually.
That shouldn't have been a tie, though. I think that should have always been a win here for DeFi because it's a 2-turn move. That should be a win either way. A tie is like the one situation that should not happen there. I wonder how this is going to be handled here.
I agree. That is that is the closest Amcan we could have wished for, right? Okay, sorry. I shouldn't make bad jokes.
Steve did say that they are going to do a 3rd one here. They're just going to replay that game, which does make sense. When an end game happens like that, it's kind of a tough call to make. So we will have another matchup here for us to watch. It was, I think, either way. You should have got a KO with either the Skeletor before the Gligar knocks you out or the Gligar before the Skeletor knocks you out. But, sometimes this kind of stuff happens with Pokemon Go, and these 2 competitors are obviously agreeing to another rematch here. And as we saw, we did see that Shadow Gligar put in a lot of work that game. I really do love that adjustment here from Lundberger. What is DeFi going to do here to respond to that?
The good thing about replays is that we have even more content now.
Very true.
Especially since we saw Skeletor actually putting in work like I hoped for, despite Lundberger bringing that Umbreon. I think that is a pretty interesting pick to bring, but honestly, I think maybe there's more safe picks like the Vigoroth that DeFi could bring again, especially into the Umbreon to prevent that safe swap. Maybe like a Vigoroth Chargeback backlane to exactly counter these Umbreon Azumarill backlines. But I'll be curious to see how they adapt in the replay of the game too now.
Yeah, I'd say let's get on into this next match here. And we do see the Shadow Gligar in the lead once again. Lundberger seems to like the strategy. Try to bait out this the Charger Bug in the back, sweep with Azu. And it seems like this strategy might be on the back foot here because we see a neutral lead matchup. What do you do in this case? Do you want to stay in, or do you know that you still need to swap out and to draw out a potential Charger Bug? The thing is, you kind of can't. because your Umbreon does not want to swap into this. I don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but Charger Bug is in a great spot once this Gligar is gone.
I think at this point you should still swap into your Umbreon, especially when it's in like foul play range. The matchup is probably not as bad as you would think, and this is also exactly what happens. And we do see the Charger Bug counter swap once again.
Yeah, we've seen this matchup so many times here. It seems like Umbreon, the dark type, puts in a lot of work into this bug type Pokemon. It's a lot of charge move pressure with these X Scissors, but Umbreon is so bulky. Generally, you do survive too. After those counters, though, from that Vigoroth, there's a chance this next X Scissor could actually end up knocking out the Umbreon before the Charge Bug has to shield.
Especially since Charger Bug probably tanks 2 moves at this point. Definitely tanks 2 moves at this point. We might see the Charger Bug farming up again and not going for immediately throwing the X-Scissor, which is definitely what is happening here. And actually, excellent timing just before the Umbreon reaches another move, which at this point should definitely knock out.
So awkward, but I do love the timing there. And also, Charger Bug might actually put in some work against this Gligar. Yeah, it looks like this X-Scissor will come through. It's not going to knock them out, but at this point, Gligar is basically going to be in the red into farm down range, and you have to shield an X-Scissor here. Can we get the farm down, though? Oh, that was a CMP. That's the worst case scenario. If you waste energy and a shield, I think that this Charger Bug has done everything it needs to do in this match to set up this Feraligatr in the backline.
In this situation, I would have also loved a swap out from DeFi, just because you have 2 neutral Pokemon that should have play into basically anything that Lundberger can bring at this point. But I also like just getting farmed down to not switch lock yourself, depending on what you expect in the backline. And a good no-shield call on the aerial ace as well, and now actually swapping the Azumarill from Lundberger's side, trying to tank some of the energy. This might get very close still, depending on how that is played out.
Yeah, if the Azu gets a full farm down here, I think it's going to be a little bit tricky for DeFi, but either way, Feraligatr is very healthy. This Vigoroth is going to spam out a lot of moves. I agree with this shield. I'm pretty sure that a Body Slam is going to do more than a Hydro Cannon at this point, but it is really awkward because all of these moves that are being thrown by DeFi are very low impact moves. You probably don't want to shield a Body Slam or a resisted Hydro Cannon with your Azu, but you're going to have to start shielding, and I do agree with that Body Slam shield that we did just see there.
At this point, Azu needs to go to 3 moves since the Feraligatr still has both shields. You might even want to clearly bait here, and it also gets shielded.
Yeah, at this point, a Hydro Cannon plus the Shadow Claws will probably be enough to knock out this Azu. A catch could be helpful here, but I don't know if it's going to be enough here to win the game because it is almost in 1 Hydro Cannon range, and this Gator generates energy so quickly. Another bait does come through, though, double baiting with the Azu. That does save 1 bubble of energy. You only need to get to 5 more bubbles, I believe, to get this next play rough here. Let's see if this Azu has enough in the tank. Maybe a catch happens. Maybe we can see this Gligar make something happen this game, but it is on Lundberger right now to make the play. An attempt to catch does happen.
He tries to catch, and
looks like a bit of an overfarm here. Not quite sure on the energy on this Gligar. I like this play. It's a bit safer. I think you can still get the Hydro off against this Azu.
Yeah.
Great energy management there by the Feraligatr. Able to close out this endgame here. Shadow Claws plus Hydro Cannon, just barely enough to win this game.
Very close. Martine, for example, would have loved the Shadow Feraligatr here, which would have had a slightly better Azumarill matchup.
That's very true.
Need the second Hydro. But nevertheless, very well played from both sides, actually, in some very close games.
Yeah, nice 2-0, but that the second game, this was technically a best of 3 here because of that tie. It was about as close as possible. So even though this was a 2-0, it wasn't just a one-sided game. I loved Lundberger's strategies here with that Gligar. It just seemed like DeFi did have the reads, adjusted the team properly here, and made the right adjustments for game number 3.
And this exactly shows how of elite batters all of our casters are, and this is exactly what we're here for. So let's kick it back to Steve and Maxwell and for the 4th matchup.
Yeah, thanks, Rob and Axon. Definitely a really tight one, and I do want to say that they didn't decide to send in that battle number 2 as a dispute. I assume because DeFi ended up winning the other 2 battles, but purely off of seeing the battles for the first time now, it probably would have been a def win for Amanda. But, still really well played from both battlers. And it does mean, Weedle, that we happen to be here for a bit of a battle of the Australians with debbiepebble versus FishyLegs 2. Now, I will say, and chat, you may already be able to tell this just by looking at her team alone. But debbiepebble is a big fan of Charm, and she is a big fan of RPS, and she has built her team as such. So, Weedle, take us through what you're sort of seeing on these two teams here. Oh, hang on. I need to unmute you on Discord again. Okay, there we go. I should be able to hear you now.
Yeah, no worries. The first thing that stood out to me was, as you mentioned, the kind of full-on RPS team that we see here on the left from debbiepebble. So I think what is going to be key here for FishyLegs is how is he going to manage around this RPS? What does he have? Does he have anything neutral against debbiepebbles' team? First thing that stands out to me is that Shadow Quagsire with the Aquatail Stone Edge spam. It has neutral and super effective moves against Debbie's whole team. So I expect a Quagsire safe swap or Quagsire lead every game from FishyLegs to try and minimize the amount of RPS that happens against him.
Yeah, FishyLegs, definitely a really top battler. Qualified for Worlds last year, qualified for Worlds again this year from the Oceanic region. And so definitely will be looking to sort of get back to those neutral matchups, as you said, as opposed to just playing into Debbie's devilish RPS that she's set up for him. You know, and it's hard to sort of, I guess you could also potentially go for like, Vigoroth is like mostly decent across the board. Annihilate, definitely giving it a little bit of a run for its money when you sort of have to take super effective counter damage as Vigoroth and do resisted counter damage to the Annihilate. I can get a little bit dicey, but when you're sort of looking at these two teams, there's not a lot of options. And so I really feel like you kind of just have to lean in, hope, keep your fingers crossed and see how things go. Inadequance in the chat also pointing out that we do have an Australian on the right-hand side who has not brought the Australian Pokemon of choice, Bastiodon, that debbiepebble has at least subscribed to running here. We'll have to wait and see if the other Aussies in the background have decided to take it on as well or not. But look, to be honest, Weedle, I think we just have to get into this game number one, see how they do end up going. And we have a Skarmory into a Cresselia. Looks like Debbie doing pretty well with the RPS from the get-go with a swap into Vigoroth. And I think I know what Debbie is going to be swapping into, Weedle.
Oh no. I was not expecting this. I must be completely honest. But the safe swap Vigoroth actually being able to land the Rock Slide against the Skarmory before throwing a Brave Bird, I assume then afterwards coming in with the Annihilate and completely countering this down. She gets a shield as well, so that might be potentially huge, given that this Annihilate has super effective counters for the Registeel and super effective Shadow Balls for the Cresselia.
Yeah, to be honest, I think FishyLegs must have been thinking there that Debbie did not have the Annihilate in the back, or else why would she not have swapped it in earlier? And that sort of resulted in FishyLegs burning that Protect Shield, and now debbiepebble now running with not only a really nice matchup where you have an energy-loaded Annihilate into a Cresselia, where you can just throw these Shadow Balls, even Night Slashes if you really wanted, but you're also at that shield advantage, staring at that Registeel in the back, and Debbie is sitting on that Shadow Swampert in the back as well. I mean, it would be hard for this matchup to be any worse for FishyLegs 2 here.
Yeah, not only the Annihilate, but yeah, that Swampert against the Registeel. I believe it is an Earthquake Swampert as well. Yes, it is an Earthquake Swampert. Even after the nerfs, we know how that matchup goes. It's a super effective Earthquake from a Shadow Swampert. The Registeel does not want to see that.
Yeah, look, if I could find the fast forward button on my remote to go through this battle, I think now would be a pretty good time to use it, because there is just not a lot of hope for FishyLegs here. I mean, at this point, he's sitting there. He doesn't know that there's a Swampert in the back. He's seeing that there's at least a chance here. Maybe if I take out this Annihilate, there's not that much health sitting on Debbie's Skarmory. Maybe I can just muscle through. Maybe if it's a Bastiodon in the back. There's the big Shadow Ball onto the Registeel though, so even if it was a Bastiodon, that is a little bit too much damage. But Debbie even shielding up here. Is she even going to show him the third Pokemon?
Oh no, I don't think she is she?
Oh my gosh.
She's just going to probably sweep with the Annihilate.
Oh. That's a little cruel. to say the least. And look, this is Debbie's strategy, right? Debbie has come in here with one game plan, and she's certainly, using everything to her devices. So I guess, Weedle, if you're Fishy Legs in this spot, right, you've just been RPS'd to the end of the earth. I mean, I have a guess as to what you're going to say going into game 2, and it's one Pokemon that we actually didn't see in this battle that you thought might be quite good.
Yeah, I was surprised because, as I mentioned, it has the Aquatail Stone Edge combination is not resisted by anything on Debbie's team. So I think he was playing more of an ABB team, as we saw there, trying to bait out the Annihilate with the Vigoroth, hoping that the Registeel could sweep in the back. But maybe next game he's going to drop the ABB style and just run a safe triple core team with the Shadow Quagsire as a safe swap to win Switch if he loses it.
Yeah, I think that in some sense, Debbie is a bit of a unique opponent here in that Fishy Legs usually competing at the very top of the, top of the ladder, fighting out on the GBL leaderboards and obviously at the World Championships as well. And most people, when they attend the World Championships, are not running hard RPS teams. And so you've actually got to adapt a little bit differently when you approach these things. So ABB might work pretty well against a lot of people. It did not pay off against Debbie here. So let's jump into game number 2, see if they do take your advice to heart, and Fishy Legs brings in the Quagsire. We see the Skarmory into Gligar, another pretty bad lead for Fishy Legs, and you can see, again, there is no Quagsire in the back, and potentially, worse yet, we also have that double Annihilate Swampert duo into the Registeel Vigoroth. But this is a little bit better, because Fishy Legs has actually baited out the Annihilate into the Registeel, which means that Swampert would have a really good time against Registeel, doesn't have as dominant of a time against Vigoroth, even though it's still not quite as good. But I definitely still wouldn't call this good for Fishy Legs.
No, it's definitely not great, but you call the Night Slash, you get the debuff of the Zap Cannon, and you get a shield advantage with the Registeel and the Zap Cannon as well against the Annihilate.
Yeah, I mean...
Put it in farm down range with the Gligar, potentially.
Oh, the Zap Cannon doesn't get it off. Really unfortunate. Really needed that to potentially go through and land a ton of damage, or at least try and get that attack debuff, as you mentioned, onto the Annihilate. But now this Annihilate is just stacked. Gligar comes in, burns a shield. Debbie gets the boost on the Annihilate.
Oh, gets the boost.
That's unnecessary. This is just salt in the wound. This Gligar, it should be in a pretty good matchup here. Debbie shielding the Annihilate, and now a Night Slash is going to come in here from a boosted Annihilate. This is bad.
Yeah, I like this play from Debbie. If she can get the shields down with the Annihilate, nothing other than the Registeel, which is now gone, likes a Brave Bird from Skarmory. So this might be over for Fishy Legs already, but we'll see how he manages to play around this bad situation.
Yeah, look, he has a lot of energy on a Shadow Gligar for a situation with no shields in play. So I feel like there is a potential recovery here depending on what Debbie does. We see the swap into the Skarmory and the insta-swap from Fishy Legs into that Vigoroth. He's keeping that energy on the Gligar for later. We don't know whether Aerial Ace or Dig might come in handy later on in the battle. The big Brave Bird coming through, as you mentioned, onto the Vigoroth, and that brings it just so low that now this Swampert can come in and actually Mudshot all the way down. You'll have to take a Body Slam on the way, but you were going to get a Mudshot down by a Swampert, which is not a situation that Vigoroth finds itself in very often. And now you've got this Gligar with energy, but it needs to burn it straight away. And Swampert actually wins Charge Attack priority, so doesn't even get to use it. That's rough.
Yeah, that's really unlucky for Fishy Legs, but very well played on debbiepebble side. Running the same team twice, and it really paid off with the Shadow Swamp into Fishy Legs' team with the Shadow Hydro Cannons. And the Skarmory Brave Birding the Vigoroth was obviously also nice to see.
Yeah, it would be pretty tough for that to have gone worse for Fishy Legs. I mean, Skarmory had 2 Pokemon on Fishy Legs' entire team that it sort of hard beat in the lead, and Fishy Legs ran them both back to back, really thinking that Debbie wasn't going to do the same thing twice. But look, again, Fishy Legs is a great battler. He did send me a DM before the stream. It was kind of like, how much do I have to pay you to put one of my wins on stream? And I just sort of sat there looking at his message, being like, he doesn't know. He doesn't know. But I will say, I'll say now,
Oh, no.
at the end of the stream, we'll do a sort of recap of all of the results at the end of the 3 rounds. But I will just throw him a bone here and say that he's done very well through the rest of the tournament. It's just happens to have not gone too well for him. But, you know, shout out to my G'day Battlers co-host, debbiepebble, at the very least. RPSing our way to victory in what ended up being the very first round of the tournament, and showing Fishy Legs why, as an Australian, he should have been running that Bastion. Just as bench pressure, just hanging out.
What, as bench pressure for the Annihilate?
Exactly. Dangerous Pokemon. You've got to watch out for these Australians out here. But with that said, let's throw it back over to It's Axon and Rob. We're going to be taking on the next battle for a getting away from North America, going back to from Oceania, sorry, to the North America versus European matchup. And again, we'll just turn this back to 0.
Hey, Steve. Welcome on in.
What's going on, man? How are you?
I guess you're my new co-host here for a second.
This
is looking good.
I'm just gonna go get a thing. What's happening?
Oh my God!
Welcome
Hello.
back, Rob. I missed you.
I missed you too. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, that was an interesting match with the Bastion, about as RPS of a game as it could be against Fishy Legs there. Obviously, the Bastion did not get brought, but the fact that it had so much bench pressure there was a little bit unfortunate. Hopefully, we do not see too much more of that here in this next set, but I am seeing some very interesting picks from both sides.
Yeah, we have the first Giratina origin on stream. The pick that got popular when Inadequance won the Utrecht special event with it and was pretty hyped up. We haven't seen actually too many people actually using it, probably because it's also not the easiest to get. You have to trade with your friends to get one under 1500 CP, but it's definitely an interesting pick. And especially these ghost type fast move and charge move, which is the moveset that NiteTimeClasher is running, is fully unresisted against everything in Adelian's team.
Yeah, there's a Pokemon on Adelian's side, though, that I see that is going to put a lot of work in, and that is that Skeledirge. Obviously, Giratina is probably going to come a lot to try to counter the Skeledirge, but we have that Fairy-type damage, we have that Ghost-type damage, and then against everything else, Cresselia does not want to see it. Poliwrath, you can Scald it, but you do generally get outpaced. We also are going to have the Alolan Sandslash that's going to get incinerated down, same with the Charge Bug, and Gligar is going to try its best probably to be a neutral pick. But do you want to bring a Gligar when there's a Quagsire, a Goodra, and a Skarmory on the opposing team? I don't know. It seems like this might be an uphill battle here for NiteTimeClasher.
It is definitely a very interesting one. I think the A-Slash is also running Powder Snow, which is the moveset that was preferred a lot when the Qtang was pretty centralized in the meta. And especially against the Vigoroth, which of course resists the Giratina, I'm sorry, is better against this one, but besides that, and of course the Goodra as well. So you could see arguments for both the Powder Snow and the Shadow Claw A-Slash. I'm personally a big fan of Shadow Claw myself, though. What about you, Axon?
I feel like in this team comp, Shadow Claw would have a little bit more play. Obviously, you don't want to be in Skeledirge versus Alolan Sandslash, but with Shadow Claw, you can actually win the zeros if you go straight Drill Run. So that is kind of a fun thing to know if you are running Shadow Claw. It also is better into Cresselia. I don't know if this is a Future Sight or a Moonblast Cresselia, but Future Sight Cresselia into Powder Snow A-Slash, I believe, can actually end up winning the Zero Shield. So Powder Snow A-Slash, it might have less play there, but it does help beat the Goodra. But Goodra also... Actually, I didn't even look at it. Goodra is pretty safe here, too. I think Goodra Skeledirge for Adelian is going to be such a hard duo to overcome for Nighttime.
I agree. A lot of very safe options all over the place. Let's move into the first battle to see what these battlers are actually going to bring. And we do see a very good lead for Adelian right off the bat. We only have Adelian's perspective for this matchup, actually, and we do see the counter swap against the Gligar from NiteTimeClasher to kind of safe swap against the Adelian's team.
Looks like Nighttime was making the read that, if he did lose that lead with the Poliwrath, then the Shadow Gligar would be pretty safe in the back. Looks like he did make the proper read because we have a Skeleturge and a Vigoroth. Both are neutral into Gligar, but I wouldn't say either one of them really wants to be in that matchup, especially down energy. We are going to see what move Nighttime throws. Is it a Dig or an Aerial Ace? I think Dig is generally the play here in this matchup, and he does know that. He goes for the Dig and chunks this Cresselia down pretty low.
At this point, another Aerial Ace should be enough to KO the Cresselia should Adelian decide to stay with it. But actually, NiteTimeClasher no shielding. And
yeah, I think at this point, he's hoping that his Poliwrath in the back is going to be able to have a lot of play once his Cresselia is gone. And he does actually get shield advantage here with his Shadow Gligar.
At this point, also, the switch timers should be pretty misaligned. So in case that Adelian decides to swap here, now the Poliwrath actually avoids the Cresselia pretty much.
If you take a shield here with this Moonblast, it could be pretty interesting. But no, I think Nighttime making the proper call that once this Cresselia is gone, shield advantage Poliwrath is nearly unstoppable. I think that now that you have this energy, you just instantly swap out. You have the energy lead with your Poliwrath. I think there's a chance Poliwrath could try to sweep the endgame now. But these Incinerates, they're chunking. Vigoroth, you might expect it to be a hard loss to Poliwrath, but unlike Annihilate, these Body Slams will add up. If you can take both shields with the Skeleturge into the Poliwrath, there's a chance Vigoroth still has a lot of play. It can absorb that Shadow Ball in the back. It's going to be a close endgame either way.
Also getting the Skull debuff here, which probably doesn't matter too much, but it just saves a little bit of HP from fast move pressure as well. Probably shielding up both
is probably still in range of Body Slam, but it is helpful not to take as much fast move pressure.
Well played by NiteTimeClasher, at least seeing this win con of going for the Shadow Poliwrath sweep. We're going to see how close it actually gets. Throws on perfect timing just before the Skeleturge gets to the disarming voice.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to need to build up as much energy as possible. He needs to get to a charge move, I believe, before this Vigoroth gets this Body Slam. If the Body Slam is reached first, it's an instant loss for Nighttime. Looks like he gets that Body Slam. At this point, Giratina has Shadow Ball, but Vigoroth, it's a normal type. Shadow Ball going to do absolutely nothing here. I think that Adelian has this one locked in, despite the best efforts of NiteTimeClasher.
NiteTimeClasher might have even expected wait for the potential catch that Adelian might predict, which might have been a great play, but Adelian, maybe predicting that, just went for the Body Slam instead. And at this point, the Vigoroth is resisting all Ghost-type moves by Giratina so well that this is definitely a W for Adelian.
Yeah, Giratina, it's a very fun Pokemon, a very interesting core breaker, but it is a little bit slow to these charge moves, and having mono Ghost coverage means that Vigoroth, which is normally a Pokemon that you'd expect to lose to Ghost types, running a Fighting type fast attack, actually, it just ends up hard walling you, and Vigoroth able to just wall all that energy and close out the backline with Adelian able to take game number 1.
Very well played by both of them. I'm curious to see how they adapt going into game 2 now. I feel like one pick that is pretty safe for Adelian is the Goodra itself. Only really has to fear the Powder Snow Shadow A-Slash that NiteTimeClasher might bring, but also after seeing the Vigoroth now from Adelian, I don't think it's too likely.
Yeah, not only the Vigoroth, but the Skeleturge as well, right? And they have the Quagsire that wasn't even brought. There's 3 hard answers. Honestly, only 2 real targets for that A-Slash. So if NiteTimeClasher is able to call properly where to bring his A-Slash, where to put it, and kind of RPS's Adelian here, A-Slash could have play. Otherwise, Goodra is such a flexible pick. As I was talking about before we even got into game number 1, I think Goodra plus Skeleturge is such a fantastic duo. But that Poliwrath, seeing that Cresselia, I can see why you wouldn't want to run the Cresselia plus the Goodra. But maybe Goodra is going to come into game number 2 as a harder answer to something like that Shadow Gligar that we saw have so much play for Nighttime in game 1.
I agree. Shadow Gligar was a great safe swap by NiteTimeClasher, and we'll be curious to see whether he brings it again in game 2. That should be following soon.
Okay, fantastic lead for Nighttime here. This is exactly where you need to see it. And actually, I didn't even realize Adelian ABA weak to this Giratina. We have that Cresselia in the backline. This is looking very strong for NiteTimeClasher.
Especially since Giratina can definitely go straight Ominous Wind at this point. If Giratina gets the boost, that's probably very tough already for the rest of the game, but only 10% chance for the boost, and it didn't happen this time. Going for the disarming voice instead.
the Shadow Balls, even into that Vigoroth, would do so much damage after a boost. We'll have to see what ends up happening. We see a second shield in the lead. Obviously, stripping shields makes it so you can Moonblast this later on if you need to. And do we get the boost? We do actually see the boost there out of the corner of our eyes. Boosted Giratina Origin. What is it going to be able to do against this Vigoroth? Is he going to stay in? Is he going to swap out? How is this game going to play out now?
Actually farming down before the next Incineroar lands as well, but the only thing that could stop Giratina at this point is the Vigoroth, and that's also why Nighttime decides to save the Giratina, expecting something that is weak to Giratina in the back, which is exactly the case, so probably a smart play.
Honestly, it takes a lot of courage to swap out of a boosted Giratina, but NiteTimeClasher realizing that if you stay in the lead matchup like that, there is almost certainly something in the back that is even weaker to that Giratina than the lead matchup was. So baiting out this Cresselia, making it so Giratina can neutralize this. If it is something like a Poliwrath again in the back, baiting out this Cresselia is such a smart play. If it's anything else than that Poliwrath, I think only the A-Slash at this point would be a liability for NiteTimeClasher. We'll have to see what he chose with his backline, though. I feel like he's in a great spot, but there could always be that wild card in the back.
Adelion needs to KO the Gligar now and get in and have enough residual energy to actually threaten the Giratina with the Moonblast. So might even want to go for a small undercharge here, but also the wing attacks chunk a lot on the Cresselia, so might not have enough HP for that. But actually only gets to a Grass Knot, it seems, which it throws. Which...
although this Grass Knot's helpful, I think, because it might put it closer to Rock Slider range. This could have been a little bit awkward for Vigoroth to take out, but and it's just the Poliwrath in the back.
That is actually the Poliwrath. Unfortunate.
Well called by NiteTimeClasher, coming back from a very tough matchup. Game number 1, getting the Core Breaker lead in game number 2, using Giratina Origin, making Inadequance proud, showing what it can do here. And now this Poliwrath in the backline, either able to counter down or just throw this Icy Wind here, guarantee the knockout against this Vigoroth, and even things out here with a decisive game 3 coming up next.
This is what we love to see, though. Close matchups, 1-in-1s, decisive game. But yeah, that's what we're all here for these elite battles.
I do want to give props to Adelion there. He did end up having the worst lead he could possibly imagine there. And not only that, but it did get a boost against him. I think he played out of that as much as he possibly could. He made it as close as you were probably going to make it for how RPS that game ended up being. But NiteTimeClasher, realizing that if you bait out that Cresselia, which is likely what was in the back, knowing that he stayed in with Skeledirge into Giratina, that Poliwrath would have a lot of play in the backline. So both trainers making just impeccable reads here this game number 2, making it so that it is going to be this decisive game 3 with whatever adjustments we might see here. Poliwrath, Giratina coming a lot from NiteTimeClasher. We did see that Skeledirge once again coming from Adelion. I don't know what else he could bring, though. He probably is going to have to start bringing that Gudra, start respecting that Giratina, in my opinion.
And the good thing for Adelion is he can always blame the second game on Giratina boosting, because that's the only way how Giratina players win, right?
Exactly, yes. So we'll have to see what this game 3 has in store for us here. What are we going to see them both lead? It is going to be the run back from NiteTimeClasher and kind of the run back from Adelion, but instead of being ABA weak with the Skeledirge lead, we have the Cresselia. I think this matchup is decent for Cresselia in the sense that if you call in Ominous Wind, you might be able to make something happen here, but we do see an instant shield.
And it is actually the Ominous Wind. Let's see.
I don't get to see it boosted, unfortunately. If that boost happens, this game's probably in a very bad spot for Adelion. Do we get the bait off here? Properly baited, so 2 baits come through. That means we're both even. These Shadow Claws are doing a lot of damage. Is that a boost? I can't tell if that's like boosted damage or not, though. I guess we'll see here with how much damage this next attack is going to do.
Probably.
We do see a shield. Oh, double baited.
Successful bait by. So now you probably want to land a catch if you're Adelion, hoping for something. But also you get a paste at this point, so this is looking very tough.
Yeah, even if you make a catch, I'm sure that the Giratina would be kind of comfortable just over farming there against that Vigoroth and getting as much energy back as it can. But we do see the catch, as you called out there, on the Vigoroth. Fantastic play by Adelion.
Very fantastic. Actually, another Ominous Wind. And still no boost for the Giratina, probably. But yeah, as you mentioned, now Giratina's place to farm up again. Actually trying to catch a Rock Slide on the Poliwrath, which didn't happen. So now you can threaten the Poliwrath with 2 Body Slams. And might even be able to counter down at this point.
Yeah, I think Vigoroth can flip this with how much energy it has. If this was an Annihilate, obviously Vigoroth would be in a terrible spot, but this is the flexibility that Poliwrath brings. Obviously, it's very flexible for NiteTimeClasher, but it also gives this Vigoroth more play into it. And we do see the third Pokemon here as this Charge Bug. This is going to be interesting in the end game. We have a Shadow Ball loaded on Giratina, but there's energy on Cresselia. There's still this Vigoroth to get through. NiteTimeClasher is going to need the perfect energy management with his Giratina, I think, to win this game.
I agree. The Cresselia should have a Moonblast sword at this point, but I don't like actually switch locking yourself in this situation, because that means you can also not snipe with the new Moonblast in the end. And especially since you're likely losing some people. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
This, I think Adelian's done something here that is very smart. You force him to throw energy here. He's not at back-to-back moves. I think Cresselia is at a Moonblast or very close to it. And I don't think NiteTimeClasher is at the Ominous Wind plus a Shadow Ball here. I don't think Ominous Wind is quite enough to knock out the Cress. And there it is, the combo play here, forcing them to throw energy against the Skeleturge, only for the Cresselia to have the Fairy-type move, beating the ABA weak to Giratina team with the Cresselia Moonblasting that Ghost and Dragon-type Pokemon in the back.
I guess the timer wasn't up for NiteTimeClasher, so definitely very smart play by Delion and clutching out that game where he was actually ABA weak to Giratina in the lead again. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you're also losing the game, which is insane.
Yeah, he might be ABA weak, but it's not like you're ABA weak in the sense that you have absolutely no play. We saw that the Fairy-type moves from both of the Pokemon that were conventionally weak to a Giratina did threaten it. It forced them to throw energy before NiteTimeClasher might have wanted to. And honestly, Adelian's play around that switch clock, getting a huge farm down with Skeleturge, absolutely incredible plays, making sure he had energy everywhere that he needed it, and he was able to close out a very close game number 3.
I totally agree. And at this point, we might want to throw it back to Steve and see what the other matchups still have for us.
Okay, we're back, and I promise this isn't the result of this battle. We're just setting it back to 0. But let me. Oh wait, am I hearing you through Video Ninja now? Oh no, never mind. I'm not. We're back. I've unmuted you. We're good. Look, we always have tech issues in these streams. It's just about figuring out how to roll with the punches. And so we've got a very exciting battle for this battle number 6 here with ZoeTwoDots versus Thaliwi. Zoe obviously going over to host EUIC, getting that Australian pride over in that European, as you know, we didn't have as many Aussies going over to invade as North America, but we at least had one in that host spot. So shout out to her. But of course, we also have Thaliwi coming in from the Latin American region. And look, Zoe is definitely coming in here with one of the most interesting teams in this tournament. So let's go through the movesets a little bit and see what she's got. So first off, she does have that Lurantis, which is running Leafage, Leaf Blade, and Superpower. I feel like a lot of people don't even know the Leafage counts, so maybe she's got that advantage on her end. She's also running the Emolga with Thundershock, Acrobatics, and Discharge. She's got Charm, Alolan Ninetales, Non-Shadow with Weather Ball and Dazzling Gleam. Also running that Non-Shadow Whiscash, standard moveset, Gligar standard moveset, and the Shadow Magnezone standard moveset as well. Repping that Paul Asher tech that she sort of cited in person at EUIC, I suppose. And then Thaliwi running a bit more of a standard tech with Charge Bug, Azu, Gligar, Cresselia, Vigoroth, and Quagsire. Mostly standard movesets there with Azu running Ice Beam Play Rough and Quagsire running the sort of standard Aquatail Stone Edge, which maybe it isn't standard. I guess I do see a lot of Mud Bombs, but if you've had time to absorb everything that we're seeing here, Weedle, what's sort of striking you about these two teams?
Yeah, they both actually have the regular Gligar, which generally people opt for the Shadow one. So that's something that I'm curious to see if they pull something off that the Shadow couldn't usually do with those regular Gligars. I obviously really like this team from Zoe. You know, it's got a lot of cool picks with the Shadow Magnezone, the Emolga, the two electric types that you probably don't see as often. You know, it's usually the Lantern and Charger Bug. If a Wild Charge could land on anything on the opposing team, that's going to do a lot of damage, and I'm looking forward to seeing if she can pull that off.
Yeah, I do think that Thaliwi's team matches up relatively well into Zoe's. I think there's a lot of threats here, but you're right. If that Magnezone can sort of get a wild charge through, that would be pretty huge for Zoe. And I really think that if she's slightly lucky with the team matchups, then she could potentially eke out a win here. I will say, we sort of we talked to Zoe about our team going into this tournament. I know she was heading to like double Go Fests during the tournament. In the middle of the tournament, we were actually was the New York Go Fest, I think, interrupted one of the rounds. She actually, I'll say this, later on in the tournament, she ended up matching up with CalebPeng, and they did their battle in person at Go Fest New York, which is pretty cool. But regardless of the matchup in front of us, I do think that Magnezone is essentially an always bring, just so that you can try and get that big neutral damage through. I also think that Whiscash is potentially okay. It's pretty decent. Alola Ninetales is quite strong as well, where Alola Ninetales with Charm, there's nothing that's resisting you. But if you run Alola Ninetales and Magnezone in the same team, obviously you sort of have to be a little bit wary about where you use your Protect Shields.
Yeah, especially when there's a Vigoroth on the opposing side with the super effective Rock Slides against the Ninetale and the counter damage on the Magnezone. Careful if you're going to run those two.
I think we're going to see a bit of luck play out in this battle, but let's jump into battle number 1. The great ZoeTwoDots taking on Thaliwi. Let's see if she can bring home that Aussie pride, and we get the Shadow Magnezone into a Gligar. Not the greatest lead of all time, and we actually see the Magnezone swap straight out into the Alola Ninetales. Now going to get some big charm damage with Cresselia coming in to answer it. Cresselia, probably one of the worst things that Zoe could have seen swap into this Alola Ninetales. Does successfully protect shield the Moonblast, which is a lot of energy burnt up, and so now we're just going to have to wait and see how much Thaliwi wants to protect their Cresselia when Zoe starts to throw these charge attacks through.
Yeah, I really like the Alola Ninetales safe swap from Zoe's side. As you mentioned, there's no charm resists on Thaliwi's side. However, she also has a good answer in Cresselia. Generally, bulky Pokemon like Cresselia or Lantern actually do pretty well against Charmers, just because the fast moves aren't doing too much when it's Pokemon like Cresselia on the opposing side.
Yeah, exactly right. But now we do see the Cresselia deciding to protect shield here. Thaliwi wants to take this Alola Ninetales down, knows that she can get to another Moonblast here, which is going to have to go through and land onto this Alola Ninetales. There's no Protect Shields left in the game. Takes it down into the red, and Alola Ninetales still going to be able to charm down. Thaliwi still holding on to that one Protect Shield, and so now Vigoroth comes in, who will be able to counter down, but not before this Alola Ninetales is able to land an Ice with the ball into the Vigoroth first up. So it's going to be a little bit weaker, and now Zoe has to make a bit of a call here. I mean, you can't really bring in Magnezone, can you? There's sort of only one option.
Well, although if you want to bring in the Magnezone, take the Body Slam energy instead, rather than a dig later, then I think that's actually a reasonable play. So that is actually what she's opted to do.
Oh.
Maybe grab a shield with like a Wild Charge or a Mirror Shot, and maybe land 2 Skulls against the Whiscash, against the Gligar. But Thaliwi's actually letting this go, just putting full trust on the Gligar.
Yeah, really, actually, lovely play from Zoe there with the Magnezone. Swapping in to the Whiscash. We've now got the Whiscash vs Gligar. Going to have to eat a dig, but is potentially going to be able to get to 2 Skulls here. I think it's going to be pretty close. Dig taking it down to about half health, and now you've still got a shield to burn as well, so maybe you could try and go for a Mud Bomb bait to try and get that last Protect Shield out of the Gligar, but going to just try and land the Scald. Unfortunately, doesn't go through. Do we see the debuff at least go through? We do see the debuff, but I feel like at this stage, this dig potentially still enough to KO this Whiscash. It's going to be a close...
Yeah,
oh no!
it's going to be close.
Hangs on. Oh, just
one. Just barely.
That's a shame.
If she reached that Scald, I think she's 1 Volt Switch off a Mirror Shot. That potentially. So, despite the not eat and having your Magnezone on the Vigoroth, Zoe made this really close. Just 1 energy, I believe, off of the Scald. So that's how close these games get.
Wow, yeah, Zoe playing incredibly well there. I think we actually saw this before the Magnezone swapped out, but there was sort of, she threw one Volt Switch before swapping, which allowed her to get to that mirror shot that in combination with the Scold would have been able to KO the Gligar. But by the same token, if you swap out immediately, if you don't get that one Volt Switch, you would actually guarantee that you would get to that second Scold from the Whiscash. And so you would do a lot of damage to the Gligar with the Scold, but then, you know, maybe you don't actually get to that mirror shot on the Magnezone, right? So it's a little bit like, it's a really tough one. Definitely, you know, she played quite well. There were a few points where timing potentially could have irked a win through. Like there were a few times when a charm was thrown on, you know, 2 charms into 3 wing attacks, for example, 3 2-turn moves. Maybe it was Psycho Cut, actually, on the Cresselia. And so potentially, you know, eking out that tiny little bit of turn advantage might have just allowed you to get to that Mirror Shot Scald combo. But I think that, you know, Zoe's definitely, you know, she's got the mindset, she's got the team that can potentially get a win here going into game number 2. But let me ask you this, Weedle. Is there anything that you think like Zoe needs to do differently in terms of, do you think it's the right team for her to be running here? Do you think there's potentially need for a swap to try and deal with Thaliwi's more meta team a little bit easier?
Honestly, I think she made the right call with like the Magnezone lead, because if you get a good lead, you can wild charge and dip, grab a shield to do a lot of damage. The Alola Ninetales safe swap, as we've already mentioned, with nothing resisting the charms, and those weather balls coming out quite quickly, given that it's a charmer. And you mentioned before as well the Whiscash being pretty good into everything but the Cresselia. So to be completely honest, I think she has a good shot if she runs the same team again.
Yeah, I entirely agree. I really think that she does have a pretty solid chance here to sort of rush through, especially if that wild charge can land you in the right spot. So let's jump into game number 2. There is a little bit of background noise. I'm not sure if that's from Axon or Rob, but we'll jump into game number 2 all the same and see what we've got. We've got the Shadow Magnezone into the Vigoroth. Not a good lead for Zoe at all, but she's going to stay in and looks like potentially going to be going for that big wild charge to try and take out the Vigoroth straight away. But Thaliwi is going to decide to burn the Protect Shield here. It's the start of the game. It's early on. You don't necessarily want to lose all of your health straight away. And now going to see that swap into the A9, which is a little unfortunate when you do have a loaded Vigoroth. These rock slides are definitely going to hurt.
Yeah, they're definitely going to hurt, but at the same time, so do the charms. Vigoroth is not the most bulky Pokemon, so Thaliwi's actually going to swap out into the Cresselia. Will we see a Dazzling Gleam potentially land?
Okay, she's going to go for the Ice Weather Ball, no Protect Shield from Thaliwi. I do think that potentially going for the big Dazzling Gleam is sort of how you sort of try and find an advantage here, because this definitely isn't a great spot for Zoe to be in. These Moonblasts are seriously going to hurt her, and she unfortunately lets this one go through. You know, doesn't make the correct call. Well, I mean, you know, she still hangs on. She's going to have another chance, but with Alolan Ninetales weakened down quite a bit, Thaliwi is sort of ready to just go straight Grass Knot and should be able to fight their way through this matchup. Zoe is going to burn the Protect Shield, so actually going to put the onus on Thaliwi to decide whether they want to win this matchup or not, because after Zoe gets this Ice Weather Ball off, she's not going to be able to get to another charge attack and actually going to let it go. So Alolan Ninetales will fight its way through, but it does mean that this Vigoroth can come back in and potentially get quite a bit of farm on this Alolan Ninetales, and throws the Body Slam, making sure that Zoe isn't able to get to her Ice Weather Ball.
Yeah, very well played by Thaliwi, exactly denying the Ice Weather Ball. And despite her having Zoe having a Magnezone left, she knows that at this HP and with the shield, the Azumarill will be able to bubble it down, which is what she's going to do.
Yeah, so at least is able to get a Protect Shield off of Thaliwi with the Wild Charge, but now swaps into the Whiscash, and you've now got a lot of work to do. This Whiscash has got to take out a full health Azumarill, well, essentially full health Azumarill, and also a little bit of a Vigoroth in the back. Potentially, you could have stocked up that Wild Charge on the Magnezone and sort of hoped that you'd get to a shield down scenario in the back. knowing that you're sort of going to get into this Whiscash carry position regardless. But we're now going to just see Whiscash throw unlimited mud bombs trying to take this Azumarill out. There's potential that you could try and go for like an early Scold to attempt to get the debuff. Try and sort of give yourself a little bit more HP stock as you try and throw these mud bombs back to back to back, but obviously that's at the disadvantage of burning a little bit more energy. So now we're going to see the Azumarill go for the play rough, which is going to do a fair bit to this Whiscash and leave it so weak that I think Vigoroth should pretty handily be able to clean this thing up. If actually play rough is going to be enough to seal the 2-0 for Thaliwi there. But
yeah, very well played by Thaliwi. The Azumarill being able to sweep basically anything in the end game up a shield, and obviously the Vigoroth being so good into Zoe's team. She played very well with the body slam energy and the counter damage on the Shadow Magnezone.
Yeah, I think that it was a bit of a rough team matchup for Zoe in sense of, as you said, like the only, her main counter to that Azumarill was going to be that Magnezone, but she was also sort of relying on her Magnezone to try and get that wild charge damage onto the other Pokemon, right? Like she didn't really have a great answer into the Vigoroth. Like she has sort of a lot of neutral answers. In Alola Ninetales is relatively decent as long as you don't get hit by rock slides. Lurantis can be quite good if you land superpowers, but again, you don't like getting hit with rock slides or even body slams. Gligar, you've got some play. Whiscash, you've got some play. But there's no sort of hard answer that could sort of just take it down. And so alongside Vigoroth being quite strong, Azumarill being similarly relatively strong, unless Zoe sort of went all in on trying to counter that Azumarill. She could have gone double electric Lurantis, but you'd then get left pretty well out in the cold as soon as the opponent, Thaliwi tries to bring in a Gligar, for example. But look, really well played and always really happy to see Zoe play. And so looking forward to sort of see some more of her battles a little bit later. Not in this stream, but potentially in the future. But Thaliwi taking out the 2-0 here. And so I think we're going to be, just before we pass it on to Axon and Rob, let's just bring back up the sort of schedule of the day. I know we've had a lot of new people join in the stream since we've last brought this up. So essentially, we've grabbed a bunch, a bit of variety of caster battles from this Clash of the Casters tournament, and we've just finished off with the first sort of half, 1 through 6, and are now going to be going through this back half with Caleb versus Inadequance up next, followed by Sophtoph versus No Mimi 15, AlphaFeeb versus EwokPadawan, some guy named PvP Steve versus TomahawkUK, and then Rise to Occasion versus Rosha Babyface at the very end there. But with that said, let's throw it over to It's Axon and Dancing Rob to cast over one of the most hyped battles of this entire stream in CalebPeng versus Inadequance. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Steve. Honestly, I feel like we're getting so spoiled here. I really wanted to watch that 2-0 Butters match and cast it. Now I get to cast the one here with Inadequance into CalebPeng. I think that this is going to be one of the best matches. It was also the one that I marked as the one that I wanted to see the most. So I'm really excited to see what these two battlers brought. Looks like a very familiar team that Inadequance brought. And then CalebPeng as well has a very unique matchup here with that non-Shadow for Alligator.
This must be a wrong team from CalebPeng, though, because I don't see a Bastiodon, and that's usually the first Pokemon he always picks.
That's very true. He is not trying to get second place, though, this time. Bastiodon is well known for his second place finishes, so I think this time Caleb is bringing a team that he knows can win it all. And I think that this team is very similar, if not the same, as what Inadequance ended up using to win his event. But back then, this Feraligatr was not a thing. It's something that can core break through these Talonflames, these Cresselias, the Giratina, and even this Azumarill. So it's going to be down to the normal types to try to hold this Feraligatr at bay.
Actually, the Wigglytuff from Inadequance looks pretty strong. We don't have anything that resists Charm on CalebPeng's side, so maybe you can set up the Wigglytuff as someone that can 2-shield sweep through the backline. That is something that CalebPeng should be aware of, especially since Shadow for Alligator, for example, can't even threaten with Fast Move against the normal types.
Yeah, definitely not my favorite strategy out there, but I think in this matchup, it is a very solid option to go with. I know Inadequance knows how to play out the Wigglytuff. A lot of Wigglytuff users are a little less smart, but he knows how to play this Pokemon, and I'm pretty sure that he is going to try to use this alongside with Pokemon like maybe Vigoroth, who's pretty safe without an Annihilate on the opposing side, to just neutral game through this matchup, get shield advantage, and then 2-shield Wigglytuff could be in a fantastic spot, as we were saying, to sweep the backline.
I totally agree. Overall, it looks like that both players have some very neutral picks, and I'm excited to see what they bring in the first battle.
As am I here. Hopefully we can see the lead matchup, Azumarill into Vigoroth. I'd much rather be the Azu here, and we do see the double normal backline. I think that Feraligatr for CalebPeng is going to have a lot of work to do if it wants to try to make anything happen this game. But that Shadow Gligar, if you can get shield advantage here somehow as Caleb, could put in work against that Vigoroth plus that Wigglytuff in the back.
I think the strategy that Martine relies on here might actually be exactly what we talked about before, because especially Azumarill doesn't necessarily have to shield against anything, so we might be able to save the shields for Wigglytuff in the back.
Yeah, definitely, because now that we have our good lead matchup here, we actually are going to land a Hydro Pump as well.
No.
We are going to have basically a full health Azu. I love this play from Inadequance to go for a Hydro Pump. He wants to guarantee either the knockout here or shield advantage, as I was saying, for his Wigglytuff. A nice swap into the Skater, but we do have a Play Rough. So Inadequance not running the standard moveset. He's running Hydro Pump and Play Rough here. No Ice Beam, but this Feraligatr is going to have to shield nonetheless.
I like this moveset actually, since Grass is pretty not there anymore in this meta. You might want to have the Ice Beam for Gligers, but that matchup is pretty good for you anyways already. So landing the Hydro Pump was for sure huge already, and now you actually have the Vigoroth that make Hunter swap against the Feraligatr though. But since Caleb is running normal Feraligatr, this doesn't threaten the KO just yet.
Yeah, and at this point, I think 2 Hydro Cannons will be reached, but if I'm Inadequance, we've talked about this so much. We just love our 2-shield Charmer. We probably let this go, take shield advantage from this all the way down with Wigglytuff, and we probably win the game just with that 2-shield Charmer in the back, now that we know that Shadow Gligar is the 3rd Pokemon here for Caleb.
Vigoroth still has energy though, so it is still not over yet. Gligar has to reach for at least 2 moves though, which it should be able to get off.
That's very true. We have to keep in mind Azu as well on Inadequance's side is also very healthy. It has just about as much fast move pressure into this Gligar as this Wigglytuff would, and this Vigoroth is so low it probably gets to 1 charge move. And yet another unique moveset here, running Swift on Wigglytuff rather than running Disarming Voice. In this matchup, it probably won't really matter because I don't think many charge moves are going to be thrown this game, and a fantastic catch by Inadequance on this Aerial Ace. Oh, but he ends up shielding this. So maybe he's thinking, you still have enough health on Azu. You don't even need to worry about 2-shield Charm. You can 2-shield your other fairy too and have a lot of play. Maybe even no shield this at this point. You know that Vigoroth does have energy, but no, Inadequance, he is outplaying us all. He is shielding up this second dig. Body Slam will come through, but I think Wigglytuff is still in a fantastic spot to keep tapping the screen, man, and then farming everything down.
At this point, just getting the bubble damage off of the Azumarill was worth it, and Wigglytuff will be able to close that game out.
Yeah, big fan of his fast move pressure here, able to almost even get to 2 Swifts there. So almost saw some charge moves from that Wigglytuff, but no, Inadequance got the fast move pressure down, and I think we really called what his strategy was going to be game number 1. Try to get shield advantage, use high damaging moves like Hydro Pump in the lead to either get a ton of damage off, opening up a fast move down later on, or to guarantee shield advantage to open up your Wigglytuff to maybe even land a charge move later on. And CalebPeng, as you're talking about, Feraligatr, one of the most neutral picks into Inadequance's team, but it was met with that double normal backline. The only matchup that you could kind of consider as like a positive matchup would be against that Azu, but even then, that's not the best matchup to see, so I wonder if Caleb might decide to drop the Feraligatr here in game number 2.
The one adaptation that Caleb might think about is now bringing the Cresselia just to have like a good matchup against the 3 Pokemon that Inadequance just brought. But the Talonflame is very scary then on Inadequance's side. You might have been able to like scare that away enough in game 1. So I'm very curious to see the adaptations, because there's definitely a lot of play still in this matchup.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because that Cresselia is pretty strong, but it does have those bad matchups. And as we see in the back, it's going to be very polarizing. But we end up instantly swapping out here to the Charjabug. This is going to be one of the best matchups you could possibly be in as a Giratina Origin user, absorbing all of this damage. We are not running Crunch. So Inadequance initially in a very great spot at the start of the game.
Probably trying to bait out something, probably the Talonflame in this matchup, but ended up catching the Giratina, which is very problematic for CalebPeng.
To be fair, while this is bad initially, we have to keep in mind what's in the back. Cresselia does not want to see this Giratina either. Charjabug is actually putting in some work here, and if we can get shields down or make it so Cresselia is in a decent position here, that Vigoroth and that Azumarill kind of don't have a hard answer to our Cresselia in the back line for CalebPeng. We end up shielding that move. Can we get a shield back from this Giratina now?
Very interesting play by Caleb. We actually do get a shield back.
Yeah, so Charjabug, even though it only has resisted damage here, we can see that Giratina being kind of slow to getting to these charge moves does make it a little bit uncomfortable here. We are throwing yet another move. I didn't see if that was an Ominous Wind or a Shadow Ball. He does just straight send the Shadow Ball. Very smart play. Ominous would not be enough. And in comes the Vigoroth instantly to save his Pokemon for the backline, catching a Body Slam here on his own Vigoroth.
And actually saving the Giratina is very smart by Inadequance, just for the case of the potential Cresselia in the back, which is exactly what's happening. Because right now,
as I was saying that CalebPeng, he was trying to bait out that Tina so his Cresselia could sweep, but now Inadequance, he thinks 3 steps ahead. He has this next move set here lined up. He is going to have all of the moves for his Giratina loaded. He can probably get some Shadow Claw damage as well. And these Body Slams, it might be a fighter into a Cresselia, but we obviously can spam out these Body Slams. And Ozu hasn't even done anything in this battle yet. And there's 2 Pokemon at half health on Caleb's side. Is there going to be enough health to go around to win this game for CalebPeng?
And actually, Caleb going for the Grass Knot here might just barely be enough to KO. Barely not, maybe. But actually, Inadequate shielding just to get off the Body Slam, which makes sense. Actually getting his shield back, even. So now Caleb will probably overfarm. And we're going to see what Inadequates do. We might even see a catch.
No, the CMP is actually what happens. The best case scenario for Inadequance. This means now this Vigoroth is probably going to get knocked out by this Grass Knot, but it gets this parting Body Slam off, putting it even into bubble down range at this point. Going to be a very tricky matchup for Caleb to overcome here. I don't know quite how much energy he has left over on his Vigoroth. It's going to have a lot of work to do, though, if he wants to have any chance this game.
Yeah. Especially since Vigoroth still needs to take care of the whole Azu that is looking very rough for CalebPeng at this point. Not sure what his plan was
body
with
slams,
this
but you need like 4 to knock him out at this point. Yes. I don't think he's going to be able to get to enough before the play rough is reached in this matchup, and that Cresselia in the back is still almost knocked out just with fast moves. Giratina as well for Inadequance is going to be able to fast move everything down if this Inadequance, or if this Azumarill rather goes down.
This is very true. So this is looking like a 2-0 for Inadequance at this point, which is not what we were hoping for. But definitely some very well-played games.
CalebPeng here getting 2-0'd by Inadequance. Not using the Bastiodon, as you were saying, maybe was a bad thing. Bastiodon would have had some play against the Talonflame, against the Cresselia, but it would have been a bit polarizing to this matchup. Although, honestly, if you did have Basti, it's really just Vigoroth you don't want to see. So, Caleb, maybe he's going to go back to his signature Pokemon here after this one. Inadequance sticking with his signatures and winning the match 2-0.
At least the Wigglytuff in Game 1 definitely wouldn't have happened with Bastiodon.
Very true.
Well, that's how
very
these
well played by both
go,
trainers here. Well called by Inadequance Game 1, not only to use Wigglytuff there, but then to drop it, I think Game 2 is a pretty smart play. Make it so instead of relying on that, you have the rest of your team use a different strategy, right? And Giratina was a fantastic substitution there. ABB backline to Giratina by CalebPeng, but Inadequance knew that. He saved his Giratina for the backline, and he honestly didn't even need to with how dominant the rest of that matchup was.
Totally agree. Definitely some smart adaptations from both sides, which resulted in such a great win in such a cool matchup by both these top battlers that we were able to witness.
Yeah, very inspiring stuff here. Seeing that Goodra once again, one of the newest Pokemon in the game here that we haven't seen since NAIC. So it wasn't actually brought in this game, but the other Dragon type did end up winning out. I think Goodra, though, is a very cool pick. I like CalebPeng's team. I really like Inadequance's team, and I am very excited to see what the next battles here in this tournament are going to have in store for us.
All right, Weedle, we are back for the, I think, third Girls That PvP showdown with Sophtoph on the left and No Mimi 15 coming in from Latin America on the right. And we are back with a Basti, apparently making up for the fact that Caleb decided not to bring it to this tournament. She's at least covered part of the deal, bringing it in. But Overall, a very interesting team from No Me Me with that Basti, Cresselia, Annihilape, Altaria, Sableye, and Quagsire. It's not like anything is ridiculously off meta, but it's all just a little bit off to the side and makes it for quite an interesting team that I'm pretty excited to see how it matches up into Sophthoph's. Oh, hang on. I can't hear you. Have I just muted you? Nope, I think this is a you.
No, that was
There we go.
my fault. Sorry.
He's a professional streamer.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I'm really excited to see how this Shadow Sableye will do, because I know Lyle Jeffs was pretty successful with the Shadow Sableye. I believe he won a regional with it, and Shadow Sableye up energy can just do well versus basically anything. So I'm really excited to see that play against Sophtoph. Hopefully less Bastiodon, but you know it exists.
Yeah, look.
Yeah.
When it's around, there's always a chance that it's going to come out, especially when you've got decent matchups into Cresselia, into Chargebug. You've actually got an okay time into Gligar, a much better time than people tend to think. But, you know, maybe Soph is going to sort of push back away against it with some pretty decent answers, especially with the Vigoroth and the Quagsire. Quagsire is running Aquatail Stone Edge, so no Mud Bomb, so not as good as it could be into the Bastiodon. Feraligatr is also running Hydro Cannon Ice Beam, so no crunch on that one. And then No Mimi's Annihilape is running, also got the Aquatail Stone Edge on Quagsire, but then Annihilape has got the Night Slash, and everything else pretty standard with that Shadow Sableye running the Foul Play at Power Gem. And as you said, Lyle Jeffs sort of running it with some success in one of the North American regionals for that victory. But to be honest, Tweedle, I still think of Shadow Sableye as a European pick in my head. It feels like a Pokemon that was very much sort of curated and shown off very first off in the European region, probably way back in 2022, to be honest now. Maybe it was 2023, but it really, in the same vein as Shadow Charizard, I think sort of grew its wings in the European region. But yeah, No Mimi, gonna see if Latin America can give it a spin and actually do pretty well with it as well. I do sort of like it into Sophtoph's team, especially, I mean, really, as you mentioned, it's got decent play into literally anything. You can get a little bit of energy, so I think it might be a case of sort of soft losing a swap and then potentially being able to come in and farm down with the Sableye. So potentially that means avoiding some RPS scenarios like the Bastiodon, because you tend to not soft lose with Bastiodon. That tends to be a bit of a hard win, a hard lose Pokemon, especially looking at Soph's team. But I don't know. What do you think we might see as a lead scenario? Because I feel like, well, I guess potentially you could use Sableye as a bit of a lead as well. Sort of start it off, get a little bit of energy. If you're in a decent matchup, you can sort of go ahead with it, but you can also just preserve that energy for later on in the matchup and potentially do quite well with it, especially when you've also got something like your own Cresselia that can potentially do quite well into almost anything that Sophtoph brings.
Yeah, I think something that is important to note here is just how good Sophthoph's Feraligatr is. With the Ice Beam, it can one-shot basically the Altaria, and the Shadow Claw plus Hydro Cannon combination hits everything else for neutral or super effective damage. So, as you mentioned, the Sableye could be used as a lead. However, if you lead Sableye into Feraligatr, as Axon, I believe, mentioned in one of the earlier rounds today, Sableye just gets outpaced by the 5 Shadow Claws to Hydro Cannon over the 6 that it takes to get to the foul play. So you might not actually want to lead with the Sableye purely for the reason of seeing a Feraligatr lead and just getting outpaced there.
Yeah, and it becomes quite tough to sort of swap anything into Feraligatr in that same token. Now, it is Inadequance's favorite non-shadow Feraligatr coming in again. It didn't do very well for Caleb in the last round, but let's see if it'll do a little bit better for Soph going into this game. So let's jump into game number 1, and we do only have one perspective this time with the Gligar going into the Altaria. We can see the Feraligatr and the Cresselia hanging out in the back are quite decent, safe picks. And to be honest, like this isn't a great matchup for Soph. I mean, the Altaria is really adding up quite a lot of Dragon Breath damage. You are able to get these Shadow Aerial Aces through that can do quite a bit to the Altaria, but it's just able to sort of outpace you on damage a little bit with all of that Dragon Breath pressure on top of the Sky attacks, and sort of really forces Soph to burn a Protect Shield here.
Yeah, the zeros from Shadow Gligar against Altaria is pretty dominant for the Altaria. However, I'm pretty sure that Shadow Gligar actually wins the ones, and the twos, I think, is IV dependent, actually.
Oh.
If you're bulky enough to survive all the Dragon Breaths to get off the aerial ace. But there you go. I think Sophtoph. Oh, that's a really good Altaria there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's knowing your Pokemon for sure. Getting the Sky Attack, taking down Gligar in the 0-1 shield scenario. And so now Feraligatr, has to come in here, clean up. It does have an energy advantage now, which, as we mentioned, it can be quite good. But Cresselia is sort of the only Pokemon on No Mimi's side that can really sort of try to neutralize this Feraligatr with energy due to those super effective Grass Knots that can come through quite quickly. And we see the big swap into Soph's own Cresselia. This is massive, wasting that Grass Knots worth of energy from the Cresselia. And now it's going to be up to No Mimi to swap in. And she has the Shadow Sableye in the back. Now, this is a pretty scary spot for Sophtoph Weedle because she is at the shield disadvantage. No Mimi is sort of going to not only outpace the foul plays, but also have that shield advantage. And you can really just try and muscle her way through. Oh, no. Oh, hang on. Sorry. I thought I saw a swap there, but I think it was just some weird graphical thing on my end. But is now going to get this foul play through. I think this will KO the Cresselia. And so now it is just going to be up to this Feraligatr to clean up the job. And Weedle, the question is, can it do it?
Yeah, I think it's not looking great, to be completely honest. Even though it's at full health, Shadow Foul Plays and Shadow Claws from this Shadow Sableye, lots of shadows there, will just add up really, really much on this Shadow Clawing for Alligator. And there's also like the half health Cresselia in the back that can fire Grass Knots. Yeah,
yikes.
That's a lot of damage.
that's a
no way Mimi's gonna take game one. Yeah,
that is a rough start. I honestly didn't realize how much that Shadow Foul Play was going to do from that Shadow Sableye onto that non-Shadow Shadow Clawing for Alligator, but that's really scary and really hypes up, as you said, how dangerous that Shadow Sableye can be when you let it run away a little bit. Now, unfortunately, non-Shadow for Alligator really didn't get to show off that same dominance when it only got that one fast attack advantage going into the Cresselia matchup. It really just Feraligator's nightmare. Like literally any other Pokemon that you look at on No Mimi's team, Feraligator with energy looks incredibly spooky. But yeah, Cresselia really just there to sort of soak that up. And to be honest, is going to continue to be a really strong Pokemon into Soph's team, really. Like unless she gets a little bit unlucky with the lineups, that Cresselia Sableye combo is definitely going to be a tough one to crack. So I guess, Weedle, the question is, Sophtoph is now one game down. How do you think she has to adapt going into game number 2 to try and take down this spooky combo?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, hopefully now you know that you don't win the one shields with your Gligar against Noemimi's Altaria. That was probably what cost her the game right at the start. But if you're expecting this Sableye plus Cresselia combo, you could opt potentially for the Charger Bug, because that is good play against both of those. So that could be something that Sophtoph tries to bring in this next game. However, you do not want to see a Bastiodon.
Yeah, I mean, after not seeing Bastiodon in game number 1, maybe you can sit there going like, maybe it's safe to come out. Maybe it's okay to get out here, but it is always a risk when you face these Bastiodon teams. And, we see it time and time again. Bastiodon is one of the best bench pressuring Pokemon of all time. I mean, how many second place finishes has CalebPeng received barely bringing out that Bastiodon? But it serves a role. It really does sort of make your opponent, it makes it really scary to bring in a lineup that is particularly weak to Bastiodon. And so you almost always have to have it in the back of your mind. I've got a little bit of insight here in that the Melbourne regional championship grand finals from the 2024 season. We had Triple Crit versus Yakko. We know that Yakko ended up winning, but I was up against Triple Crit, who was running Bastiodon for another second place finish in Bastiodon's long list of second place finishes. And so Yakko sort of talked about the fact that he couldn't bring in a lineup that was weak to Bastiodon. And they ended up going for 15 games, winners final, grand final reset. They went for a full 15 because Yakko was just sort of locked into only certain teams that wouldn't lose to Bastiodon, if he got caught with a bad lead. And sometimes that's just how it goes. And so Sophtoph can opt to go for a bit of a risk, really lean into the Charge Bug, maybe lean into some Pokemon that, Charge Bug Cresselia, for example, would be quite bad into the Bastiodon. But, maybe sometimes that's just the call you have to make. So let's jump into game number 2, see if No Mimi does opt to bring in that Bastiodon. And okay, this is an okay start with No Mimi bringing in that same lead matchup with the Altaria, this time getting met by Soph's Cresselia, and we can see the Gligar for Alligator coming in again in the back line. So no Charge Bug this time around, but Soph is going to try and go for the early Moonblast, which could be really big here, landing into this Altaria if no Protect Shields comes up, and no Protect Shield, so it brings it down quite low.
Yeah, this is looking good for potentially what we saw in the last game, letting go of the lead and then coming in with the Alligator to potentially get a big Shadow Claw down later in the game.
Yeah, it looks like Sophie's going to stay in and try and win the lead here with the Moonblast Cresselia, recognizing that there could be that, Sableye lurking in the background, and there it is. So Sophie's going to try and get up to another Moonblast here, hope to land it through. I mean, at this point, No Mimi knows that there is going to be no Grass Knot coming through here, and so knows that a Moonblast is there. He's going to burn that Protect Shield, and Soph now swaps into the Feraligatr at a slight energy disadvantage. And so Weedle, this might be finally where we sort of see these two titans of energy advantage face off, where one of them is holding all the chips.
Yeah, I really like that hard swap from Sophtoph, because she recognized that if the Sableye gets the full farm down on the Cresselia, that it will just straight up outpace the Feraligatr.
Oh!
So hard swapping into the Feraligatr, oh wow, letting go the Hydro Cannon. I think Noah Mimi made a smart call, recognizing that she would just get outpaced by those spammy Hydro Cannons. So he's going to take the shield advantage on this Quagsire.
Yeah, and now this is another Pokemon that can be incredibly deadly when given an advantage. Shadow Quagsire with a shield advantage, because Shadow Quagsire gets to its charge attacks so quickly. It is literally 4 mud shots to an Aqua Tail. That is so spammy. And now Sophtoph has to just deal with it when her Cresselia is quite low. Obviously, it would be brilliant if you could land a Grass Knot from Cresselia, but when you have such little HP and Quagsire gets to its charge attacks so quickly, that can be a much easier task said than done. And so now we see the Gligar coming in. It looks like Sophtoph is potentially going to be going for a catch situation, maybe trying to just eat a charge attack on the low health Cresselia in the back. Going to have to eat an Aqua Tail along the way as she charges up energy, but do we see a swap? There's the swap, and she makes the catch! The Aqua Tail is going to go onto the Cresselia, KOing it. And so now, Weedle, is this enough? Is Gligar going to be able to take out the remaining Pokemon for No Mimi?
Yeah, I think this Shadow Dig is going to take out this Shadow Quagsire, and that was a really well-played catch from Sophtoph to stay in this set.
Whoa!
Little bit of Sableye left, but that gets Wing Attack down.
Okay, I now have a confession to make, because I'm looking at my the battles that I have in this folder here, and I do not have a game 3. So I'm not quite sure what I'm So we'll pass it over to Rob and Axon, assuming they're both sort of ready to go, and they'll be going in for the next round, which is going to be AlphaFeeb versus EwokPadawan. So again, apologies, but throw it over to them. We're both still here, apparently. So let's do this one more time, shall we? Look, the teams moved, but we didn't. Let's try to.
Hello, we are back.
Hello. That was very
All
funny.
right.
So yeah.
Bit of
Welcome
an
back,
anticlimactic
everyone.
way to conclude that last set there, but congratulations to Sophtoph. Wish you could have watched it. But speaking of robbed games, we weren't able to watch that on stream. We are going to see Rob cast some games this time. We'll hopefully have some good fun with this and some very interesting Pokemon. Once again, seems like we're getting a lot of really cool teams by these casters. This time, that Whimsicott really stands out to me as a unique pick.
Yeah, actually, the first Whimsicott we see today, the moveset seems to be Seed Bomb and Moonblast. I know a lot of people were running Grass Knot as well, just to have the better energy efficient move besides the lower energy, and compared to the lower energy move. We also see a Feraligatr actually running Ice Beam again, like we did in the last one. And besides that, all standard movesets for the rest of AlphaFeeb's team.
Yeah, as you were saying, they're opting for that Seed Bomb rather than Grass Knot. Grass Knot does do more raw damage, but I was talking about how Sableye is kind of slow earlier. Whimsicott would be just as slow if you're not running the Seed Bomb moveset. So getting to moves in 10 turns or less is absolutely insane. It is what you need to have in this meta, and this is a big core breaker because we see a Quagsire, Annihilape, and Altaria on EwokPadawan's side. We also see double steals from AlphaFeeb, which is pretty unique. Normally you see maybe one steel type, maybe two counter weaknesses, but not normally two steals just like this with the Shadow Magnezone and the Registeel. Two very impactful Pokemon with their charge moves, and they do very similar things, having a lot of electric type damage.
These are some very interesting team composition as well. AlphaFeeb being very weak to fire on the one side, but also very strong against fire on the other side. Whimsicott being weak to fire and flying, and Ewok has both of these, so not as many neutral picks on first glance. I'm curious to see whether this matchup will go down to team calls or whether we will actually see some very neutral plays.
Yeah, from what I can tell, it seems like the best Pokemon on both teams do have RPS matches that could end up happening. I hope that we see some neutral gameplay, but obviously the Skeledirge here, it's 3 for 3, or it's 3 and 3 with being very strong into the team. Either you see the steel types, the grass type, or you do see the water types, and it makes it very awkward here. Are you going to line the Skeledirge? Are you even going to bring the Skeledirge here? We're just going to have to see here in game number 1.
And in game number 1, we actually see the Feraligatr from AlphaFeeb. Probably the one matchup that it wants to avoid is the Charjabug. And actually risking the Quagsire safe swap, that is probably the smart play by AlphaFeeb, since Quagsire probably is the most neutralish pick into Ewok's team. Answered by the Annihilape, actually.
Yeah, Annihilape is probably the one true answer to Quagsire, and it's not because you're doing any sort of super effective damage or resisting these moves. It's just because you have so much fast move pressure and the ability to spam out these Night Slashes. But we do actually see a very early shield from EwokPadawan, shielding up this Aqua Tail from AlphaFeeb. The Quagsire's almost had another move. If this is not a Shadow Ball, then you survive this. It is a Night Slash, but we do see the shield come up, and we do see yet another Night Slash come through. I could see this being called and get to this next Aqua Tail, take 2 shields, just using 1 ourselves, getting a nice farm down, and maybe Gator up shields can have a lot more play into that Charjabug that we saw in the lead.
I like this play actually by you, because I think the Annihilape has a lot of well, actually no shielding. I would have expected a shield, since the Annihilape can threaten basically anything in AlphaFeeb teams with the Shadow Ball. But it seems like Ewok has a different plan in this game. Actually, coming back with the Charjabug.
Oh, we get the Stone Edge off. This is going to guarantee both switch and shield, or just KO this Charjabug straight up. What is Ewok going to do here? The no shield doesn't quite knock out. We have Gligar for this.
God.
And this game, out of nowhere, after a terrible lead for Feeb, is looking about as good as it possibly could now.
That is a very interesting play. Skarmory is actually the last Pokemon by Ewok, and at this point, definitely Feraligatr should take this game. So actually, very well played by AlphaFeeb.
Imagine keeping Switch advantage this game. If Ewok had Switch, he would have had that Gligar with his Skarmory. He would have had Charjabug here into this Feraligatr. Now, he doesn't even have a Charjabug. It got one shot by a Stone Edge, and now the Skarmory is faced off against this Gator. It's not going to have a great time. It might get to 2 moves, but these Hydras plus these Shadow Claws are going to put it well within range where Gligar could easily knock them out, even if Skarmory somehow does get through this matchup.
I totally agree, and this is why we mentioned earlier that it might have been the shield on the Annihilape might have been a bit smarter. at this point going for the Brave Bird because you know it's over.
Yeah, the Sky Attack would not have been enough there to knock out that Feraligatr. So seeing that Brave Bird come through was a smart play, but I think it's a little too late. Skarmory, a very slow charging Pokemon, and after that lower defense, this Gligar is going to have no problems knocking out the Skarmory here with this dig and taking game number 1 after a very terrible lead for Phoebe, flipping it with that Shadow Quagsire, doing so much work in this game, and a fantastic game from AlphaFeeb game number 1.
Totally agree. Now, I'm very curious to see how Ewok wants to adapt, especially because the Quagsire Sasquatch actually gave him a lot of trouble. I could see the Altaria coming into play from his side because it feels very neutral in what AlphaFeeb actually brought, and even in the more harder matchup for Altaria, you actually have some play to threaten back, especially with the Sky Attack against the Whimsicott.
Yeah, that's very true. And even Magnezone, you'd expect the Steel type here to easily beat Altaria, but it's not actually that one-sided of a matchup. You have to debuff yourselves with these wild charges, and you do end up getting to a Moonblast before they get to a wild charge plus a Mirror Shot. So Altaria, it can make that really uncomfortable here. I think Altaria is a very smart shout-out here. How are you going to bring a Registeel, right? I don't think Reggie can really come into this team.
Yep.
There's a Charge Bug, Skeleturge, Quagsire, Annihilate. It's really just trying to RPS the Flyers if you do bring that Reggie. So being able to have a safe pick like that Altaria here in game number 2, I think that would be a very smart read.
I remember that Registeel and Turgid's probably not even the most dominant matchup for either. For Registeel, of course, but the other 3 are definitely way too good against Registeel to even have a chance bringing it. But even Altaria doesn't have the worst matchup against Registeel, as you mentioned. Those playing in Grassroots for a while remember a lot of Altaria plays in 2019 and 2020, and we even had Alliance in GBL playing something like Altaria, Lapras, Azumarill, and Altaria was actually your Registeel counter back then, which was crazy to think about.
Exactly. That's because if you don't get debuffed on your attack stat, those Dragon Breaths do 2 damage to Reggie. It adds up even though it is resisted. So we'll have to see here, what is the lead going to be in game number 2? Going to be that Feraligatr into a Shadow Quagsire. Much better lead this time for Phoebe. But Quagsire, if you get baits off properly, or if you just play out the lower shielding scenarios, you can probably land a Stone Edge, do a lot of damage to this Feraligatr, and make it so this matchup, while comfortable for Feraligatr, is not one-sided.
Seems like AlphaFeeb is actually bringing the same team, so I'm especially curious whether EwokPadawan maybe went for like a 2-stroke Altaria on the back, which might be a great strat in this game, if he expects AlphaFeeb to bring the same line.
Fantastic
Great shield
shield there.
from Feeb.
Yeah, he's shielding up that Stone Edge, means that this Quagsire is not going to get to moves anytime soon, but we try to go for an overfarm. Is this another Stone Edge? Did AlphaFeeb miscount and not CMP on this move? He no shields. It's an Aqua Tail. Fantastic counting by AlphaFeeb. He gets a full Shadow Claw down and nearly has 2 Hydro Cannons against this opposing backline, whatever it might be. And for Alligator, it's so safe into this team. There's really nothing that wants to absorb 2 moves, and it's an Annihilate that's going to try to.
Yeah. Definitely tanking one of these Hydro Cannons, but even the Shadow Claws afterwards are going to be very tough. Actually shielding the first one, probably letting the second one go, unless you really want to rely on the Annihilate. Didn't do it in the first game. This time also no shielding.
Yeah, this Feraligatr is just shredding through this Annihilate's health. They have to throw a move as quickly as possible, or else take a lot more Shadow Claw damage, or maybe even let them get to a Hydro Cannon. Throwing this Night Slash is very smart, but that Gligar in the back is going to love to see this. Shadow Quag is nearly uncontested. Altaria might be the worst thing that could be in the back right now, but it is not the ult. It is a Skarmory, and Quagsire loves to see it. I think AlphaFeeb is in a fantastic position right now.
I totally agree, especially since you need the Brave Bird to land on Ewok side against the Quagsire. This looks very good for AlphaFeeb at this point.
Yeah, and even if you do end up landing that Brave Bird, that puts it into range where Gligar might not even be in the worst matchup. You could probably land a Dig and knock them out, but I like this. It's a safe shield. Just strip it down with these Aqua Tails. You don't want to take the risk that a Brave Bird, as we see right there, would just one-shot our Quag, making it so that Ewok would have any play. AlphaFeeb, fantastic shield calls this game. No shielding baits, shielding nukes, and now he has so much energy after this debuff. Aqua Tail is almost certainly going to be enough to knock out this Skarmory.
For sure. At this point, the Annihilate is also unfortunately way too low to counter down the Quagsire, potentially threatening the Gligar, so this looks like a very good game for AlphaFeeb.
AlphaFeeb proving that not only can he win a game where he loses the lead, but he can keep the advantage from a positive lead, winning this game very decisively, maybe not even needing to bring his Gligar back in this game. Quagsire just closing out this backline. His water types, an uncontested threat this game, it seems. No Altaria, so the Feraligatr plus Quagsire duo put in a ton of work against EwokPadawan's entire team.
Definitely agree, and especially since grass Pokemon are very rare in these meta nowadays. Probably hard to say when we have a Whimsicott right in front of us, but I want to say that's generally true. And you see that two water types that you might even want to run, one in the lead, one in the backlines, that likely threatening against many teams, and a great meta call by AlphaFeeb.
Yeah, I mean, we are talking about how there's two water types here. Grass types might be good into that. For Alligator, though, it actually has more play into grass types than you'd expect, especially when running that Ice Beam moveset. And into Whimsicott, I don't know if the regular Gator can do it quite as well, but the Shadow, I know, just wins straight in the 2-shield, straight Hydro Cannon. So Whimsicott, while it is a good grass type, it does need to watch out for some of those Pokemon. We didn't even see the Whimsicott, unfortunately, this game, which is a little bit sad because I love seeing these kinds of core breakers here. But we didn't even need them. AlphaFeeb knew his win conditions, play for his water types, know that his Shadow Gligar as well, as long as it is not against that Skarmory, is going to be in a great spot. And he was able to align his team game number 2 very properly, game number 1 playing around energy and shields perfectly.
Yeah, totally agree. And especially since AlphaFeeb won, he's definitely progressing in the tournament, and we might see more from him maybe in next week's stream. We'll see.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. And I think that we're actually going to do a back-to-back one here because the next matchup actually has a very special guest here. Someone who you guys might recognize. PvP Steve himself, I believe, is going to be fighting Tomahawk in this next matchup.
Let's go. That sounds exciting. We actually do have teams already, and it can't be an Australian without a Bastion on raid.
Yeah, oh my goodness. Well, we have the signature pick here from Steve. We saw that signature picks were very strong for Inadequance earlier today, and that Wailmer, I don't know how much play it's going to have. It actually looks all right here, all things considered. There's at least one target for it, so maybe we'll see it line up against a Typhlosion. But Steve was actually telling us that these are two of the competitors, like some of the only two that have ever brought Wailmer. Tomahawk has brought a Wailmer to a Play Pokemon tournament in the past. So hopefully Tomahawk knows how to play around it here this game.
I must admit I'm not the most familiar with Wailmer matchups, so maybe I underestimated a bit, but especially since Shadow Typhlosion has the new edition of Thunder Punch, that probably makes your Wailmer matchup a lot better than it was before.
That is completely fair. Wailmer does actually have access, if you guys don't know, Water Gun, Body Slam, and Scald is its moveset. So not exactly a great moveset in the sense that it's kind of slow to get into the moves, but like it's the same pacing as Lickitung to Body Slam and to Power Whip. So knowing that means you know your Wailmer counts now. And I don't expect to see too much Wailmer here, but the Bastiodon actually has quite a few targets. I think there's only one hard answer to that thing. Actually, what is the moveset on Ozu? If it runs a Hydro Pump, oh, it actually is a Hydro Pump Ozu. So never mind. There are two things that can decently answer this Basti, but it is still an awkward matchup here. If you line it up into the Typhlosion, into the Lickitung, the Charjabug, or the Cresselia here, Bastiodon might have a ton of play for Steve.
Definitely agree. On the other side, the Poliwrath from Tomahawk, which is the only Bastiodon counter, actually has a lot of troubles with the Annihilate, the Cresselia, and also the Gligar. So we might actually even see some Bastiodon action. I know a lot of players use it mostly as a bench pressure, but also someone has to have the guts to actually bring it, right, Axel?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've seen the wrong end of a Bastiodon before in a Play Pokemon tournament. It's going to be interesting to see if Steve has what it takes to align his Bastiodon perfectly against TomahawkUK.
If anyone can do it, then it's an Australian. But it seems like he's not actually bringing it in game 1, besides to go for the Lickitung instead.
Extremely disappointed here. No Basti. Are you kidding me? It would have loved this Cresselia.
For sure. But also this Lickitung loves the Cresselia as well. This matchup is more neutral-ish than you think, though, despite Lickitung having access to Lake of Hitting in the lead. And especially since it's Future Sight Cresselia, two Future Sights nearly threaten the KO on the Lickitung side.
Exactly. I think that Cresselia actually can flip the one-shield matchup here. I think good Cresselias can potentially flip the 0 as well with Future Sight, but it needs to be a really specific Cresselia to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But now that we see that there's a Cresselia in the lead for Tomahawk, you have to imagine he's not going to be super weak to Basti in the back. This is a Pokemon that's already kind of weak to it. We have to assume there's a Poliwrath at least in the back there. We obviously don't have his point of view, but we can imagine it might be Poliwrath, and I could see Azu as well being in the back line here.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Oh, get the bait off with the grass knot there.
Interesting. We don't see Lickitungs getting shielded too often, but also Lickitung has a very neutral play into everything on Tomahawk's side, so I definitely see that play there.
Future Sight Cresselia, proving why it's so strong. Is this a Future Sight or is it a Grass Knot? It's a Future Sight.
It is.
Lickitung nearly winning or nearly losing the 1-0 shield. Holy cow! What?
That was very close. And now actually Lickitung itself from Tomahawk deciding to go for the Gligar, probably expecting any of the water types in the backs, and that's why you want to go into Gligar and not Cresselia here. If it's Turgidduck in the back, of course, then you make the wrong card.
Yeah, he went APA to Basti here. So it has to be that Poliwrath, right? It literally has to be.
At least the bench pressure definitely didn't work, unless he definitely expected no Bastiodon to come.
One thing we have to keep in mind, Tomahawk himself has used a Shadow Bastiodon, I think got second place with it as well. He knows how Bastiodon players think. Maybe he knew Steve would not be bold enough to bring it into game number 1, and Steve here was not actually bold enough to bring it here, but he does have the answers for the things that would beat the Basti. If it is that Poliwrath in the back, we're in a great spot, but honestly, there's a lot of things that could be in the back right now that could be troublesome. That the potential Typhlosion actually would have a ton of play. The Charjabug as well could be very tricky depending on what the third Pokemon is going to be. Oh, we actually end up seeing that he lets his Gligar go.
We actually also saw the Power Whip from the Lickitungs. Steve probably knew that the Body Slam wasn't enough and wanted to get the move off. Tomahawk actually went for the Power Whip, which was a very smart play. So now Steve will probably overfarm and see whether he can beat whatever is in the back.
Looks like it is that Poliwrath, a nice catch, but it's going to be what you'd want to throw anyway, probably. You probably need 2 moves here. After they get a debuff, they probably shield anyway. But I think Tomahawk might actually be in a winning position here despite being in a losing matchup in the moment.
Probably Moonblast would have been the better move, and you could have potentially Sucker it down afterwards, but now it definitely looks great for Tomahawk. And at this point, your lose con might be Steve no-shielding Ice Beam and Icy Wind, if there even is a lose con, but actually it is an Icy Wind, so let's see.
Yeah, this game does get to continue on just a little bit longer here now that Icy Wind was the move that was thrown by Tomahawk. With that said, though, these counters are going to put them pretty low, or even he just lets that go because Lickitung is still around. I think at this point, Tomahawk is very confident in his Lickitung to just fast move down this Cresselia, maybe even get to 2 Body Slams here before they get to their 2 attacks. The first Body Slam does come through. I'd assume if Tomahawk is throwing 1, he probably has 2 right now, and this Lickitung likely can close out game number 1.
Steve made that very close and nearly got to 2 Grass Nuts, but Lickitung just too bulky and Cresselia just not bulky enough, I guess.
Yeah, a bit of an unfortunate lead for our PvP Steve here. He obviously did have his Lickitung into a Cresselia, but I don't think any of us realized just how bad the matchup was there. If you have Future Sight Cresselia, it was able to do so much damage, get a shield, and basically knock out the Lickitung. It took out not only a shield, but an entire Lickitung just on its own, meaning that even though it wasn't necessarily the best backline for Tomahawk, he had enough of an advantage that his Poliwrath did not need to worry about being down shields. It got an Icy Wind into that Cresselia, and Steve unfortunately did end up losing game number 1. Tomahawk, very well played.
But also Steve knows now how to play the Cresselia matchup with his Lickitung, especially against Tomahawk-specific IVs. So I'm curious to see how he's going to adapt in the second game, and whether he will finally bring either the Wailmer or the Bastiodon, which is what we were hoping for.
Yeah, the 2 signature picks here were unfortunately absent in game number 1. Bastiodon did look like it had a ton of play, though, so I think that Steve might see that. He might bring it, but it's just going to be kind of that 1 in 6 call. Do you think you're going to get that 1 good lead or that 1 bad lead with that Poliwrath, or do you think you're going to get a Cresselia, a Charjabug, Lickitung, Typhlosion? Even Azu is not the best, but you'd rather see that than the Poliwrath. It's kind of a gamble, but it's probably one of the best gambles a Bastiodon user is ever going to have here. Yeah. Only one hard answer to you. I think the Basti has to come.
I'm not very familiar with playing Bastiodon myself, but I feel like leading Bastiodon would be very tough right now, and might want to expect the Poliwrath lead on Tomahawk's side. We're gonna see what is gonna happen in game 2 now.
Okay, the Basti does come, but into a Lickitung lead with the Azumarill there, and it safe swaps the Lickitung and Bastiodon. It comes in, it starts doing what Bastiodon does best: smackdown, Stone Edge, absorb all of the licks, all of the power whips here. This is such a solid matchup for our Steel type Pokemon here.
So if Steve is predicting the Poliwrath in the back, he has some perfect alignment that he definitely wants to keep, which should be possible with Bastiodon, right? So let's see how this matchup plays out.
Yeah, at this point, even if Lickitung shields once, I think Basti still ends up keeping switch advantage. So Tomahawk would have to go down 2 shields if he wants any chance. But even just letting 1 move through, I think that's enough for Steve to just always keep switch advantage this game. And if it is that Poliwrath in the back, we do have Cresselia. Cresselia, though, it does have a few things it does need to be kind of concerned about if they are in the back line. Specifically that Typhlosion, that Charge Bug. Once again, it could be a little bit awkward. And knowing that we see that this Bastiodon is here, it might be an ABB-style team against Basti. I could see that being the case, trying to bait out the Basti with the Lickitung and having another Basti weakness in the back, such as that Charge Bug, which could be awkward for Steve to deal with.
Steve at least definitely not saving on the Bastiodon. Tomahawk trying to snipe the Bastiodon with the bubble, but Steve still getting off the move. And now the Azumarill is actually switched lock, and Steve actually going to Cresselia here, so not sure what he's expecting in the back. Probably not the Poliwrath at this point, since then he would have saved the...
I think I like this play by Steve. He's expecting it not to be Poliwrath because he had a Pokemon that's already strong against the Basti in the lead. And would you really run this hard ABB weak to a Cresselia if you did have that Poliwrath in the back? I'd be surprised. I think that he's making the read. It's either a Typhlosion or potentially a Charge Bug as the 3rd Pokemon on this team. He's also shielding this to be safe, just in case he's wrong, just in case it is that Poliwrath.
It is definitely a pretty interesting play to... Let's see what is in that back, because I'm kind of hesitant to evaluate the play yet, what is happening. I know it is actually the Cresselia itself. So you were actually right.
Yeah, I think he's in a good spot here. He unfortunately does get caught on here. He could have got the Psycho Cut down, unfortunately. But, I mean, we still have that full health Lickitung. And Cresselia, since this does not have Moonblast on the opposing side, they have to Grass Knot us to knock out our Cress. We can get a ton of fast move pressure here. I think that now Steve is in a fantastic position. Great read by him, expecting a Pokemon in the back that his Lickitung would be even better into.
The Cresselia will definitely have a hard time by taking out both the Lickitung and the opposing Cresselia. We actually have the Cresselia expert in the chat, being Lurgan Rocket. He could tell us everything about all Cresselia AVs, and in which Cresselia AVs the straight grass knot is even better in the mirror, but I think at this point it might just be a little bit too much for Tomahawk.
Yeah, I almost would have liked to see a shield immediately on the first move that this Cresselia threw, because just as I was about to say, they could bait you now with the Grass Knot, and that first one is very likely not a bait. But now, even though you did shield that bait move, we got a lot of lick damage here. This Body Slam will do a lot. We're still outside of range where Future Sight will knock us out for now. And our own Cresselia in the back should be able to just get to the Grass Knots that it needs to. If we get this next Body Slam off, that would be critical. Make it so our Cresselia has a little bit less work to do. But honestly, I think that our Cresselia in the back is still going to be good enough to win this game.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the switch timer wasn't up. Otherwise, I would have loved to see a Future Sight catch on the Cresselia. But even like that, it should just be enough to Psycho Cut down the Cresselia. And I think Tomahawk knows. And yeah, he didn't even shield in the end, which makes sense. So well played by Steve.
2 shields for the next match here. And now we have a decisive game 3. Are we going to see this Whalmer? That is what the fans want to see, Steve. Come on, you got to bring it. I know it didn't have any play in that last game, but come on, the fans. Think of the fans now.
This game 3, bring Whalmer might be the actual play, or what might be what going to ruin it for you from the very start. I'm very curious. And it seems like he's actually not bringing it. But the Bastiodon again.
It might be a ran back team here by Tomahawk. I think that we did see a different lead from Steve. He just swapped his order of Lickitung and Cresselia.
Yeah.
But this is still just about as bad of a spot for Tomahawk to be in as it could be. He's going to have this Basti that can get a lot of damage onto this, keep switch advantage, get energy lead into the back line. And I think that Steve should be in a solid position depending on what the third Pokemon on Tomahawk's side is going to be.
Steve might be interested in adapting his strategy and potentially even saving the Bastiodons, and it feels pretty obvious that the Bastion is gonna get baited out, and maybe expecting a Charger back in the back or something like that.
Yeah,
So
I think
very
at this point, a
curious to
Charger
see.
Bug or a Typhlosion could be like the only thing that could bail Tomahawk out of this. So keeping the Basti alive could be a good play, especially because you don't really need switch advantage against an Azu with both your Cresselia and your Lickitung.
This also seems like an attack-weighted Bastiodon, since 3 Power Whips actually pretty much threaten the KO on the Bastiodon. But it seems
man.
like PvP Steve still doesn't want to shield.
Guess
And
Steve might want to
should
get some more
barely get
XLs
the
for his
Smackdown
Basti and
now.
Adventure Week coming up here. Get a super XL Basti. But we do see the Stone Edge. Once again, this is playing out very similarly to game number 1. Stone Edge will not knock out Sazu, but this bubble will knock out our Basti. This chip damage is very nice. And it is going to come down to that back line. And there is
And
the
it
Shadow
is.
Typhlosion.
I actually would have loved to see the Bastiodon save after the Smackdown, because then you would have gotten to another Stone Edge. So it's now the Lickitung is probably in a... Well, I'm not too familiar with that matchup, and these legs chunk a lot.
If you've ever
It's
seen
probably
the
not
Charizard,
worst
Shadow
spot for
Charizard
Tomahawk.
into Lickitung matchup, it's going to play out very similarly. We call a bait as well. That is such a wild bait call, in my opinion.
That
you can
is
just double
very
shield this
huge.
and never take a blast burn. But calling this as well just instantly make Tomahawk lose the game, in my opinion, off of that nice bait call by Steve.
I definitely have to agree. If the big fire move got no shield, then that would have probably been GG, since the Cresselia has no play against the Typhlosion. But like this, Steve is in an excellent spot.
Yeah, we do get to this next body slam here, and because Typhlosion is so squishy, even if somehow our Lickitung does go down, this is in Cycle Cut range for our Cresselia, and there is still that Azumarill in the back. Azu has nowhere to go here. Once again, he was kind of ABA weak to that Lickitung, but we have our Cresselia that can just easily knock this out. After that Stone Edge as well, it puts it into a very comfortable double Grass Knot range for Cresselia, and I think that at this point, Steve should have this one locked in.
I totally agree. So great adaptation by Tomahawk, but also very smart play by Steve, actually recognizing what might be in the back and adapting and
Yeah.
making a great call on the Lickitung.
And adjusting to Bastiodon, right? We didn't see the Basti game 1. I'm really surprised we didn't, but him realizing just how strong Basti would be, and also knowing that there's a good chance that it's going to be an ABB team to Basti. So you want to have it in the back. Don't lead it into a bad matchup. Just keep it in the back. Keep it safe, and it is very likely you will avoid one of the worst matchups you could have with that Bastiodon user.
The strat was probably to scare away the Poliwrath in game 1, and then his Bastion was way safer in the end. And it always got a good matchup. And by that, Steve actually takes the 2-1 over Tomahawk as well, and those Australian cars was actually crushing it.
Yeah, fantastic reverse sweep by Steve. Honestly, no Whalmer action does disappoint me a little bit, but I don't think it had much play here. Steve, instead of playing for the fans, he played for the win, which is probably the better thing to do here in a tournament like this. But the Bastiodon still gave the fans what they wanted. We were able to see at RPS some Lickitungs do a lot of work as well as this tournament, and I hope that Steve is going to be getting on into day number 2 and having more Bastiodon, more Whalmer action here. We'll just have to see who ends up making it out of this initial stage of the tournament.
It would have even been the perfect opportunity for the Whalmer to come into the Typhlosion in the end, but this just means that Steve has to win in the next to bring us some Whalmer action next week, as you mentioned.
Exactly, yeah. I guess we can pass it off over to Steve here himself and see what the next battle has in store. Maybe he'll tell us if he's going to be able to bring a Whalmer into any future battles for us.
Yeah. Look, I thanks Axon and Rob for casting that absolute bozos Bastiodon battles. I mean, talk about RPS, right? But look, I may have not played Whalmer for the fans in this one. I think I actually I brought Wailmer quite a bit through this tournament. Unfortunately, against Tomahawk, there just wasn't there wasn't really an out. Even against that Typhlosion, like you've got those really quick. I learned this from a YouTube video from this YouTuber you may not know, Weedle. His name is It's Axon. When the Typhlosion Community Day came out, I watched a video from this guy. Talking all about how it's only 2 incinerates the Thunder Punch, and that's pretty quick when you've got a Wailmer hanging out that's a little bit slow. But look, I will be doing I'll recap all of my battles a little bit later, not in this stream but another time, and so we'll get to see some Wailmer action for the fans. But hey, at least Bastiodon got a little bit of a run, right? Look, sorry Tomahawk, it is what it is. But with that said, it does bring us to the final matchup of the day, of the week. Again, this is sort of the rounds 1 to 3 before we then go into rounds 4 and 5 next week. And we'll have a little bit of after this match, we'll have a bit of a results review, take a look at where we are, take a look at who's in it to win it at the end of all these battles, and whether we have a chance of seeing some Wailmer play out in next week's stream. So, Weedle, we have another one of the most hyped matchups of the stream here. We have Rise to Occasion, one of the top battlers from North America, relatively recently jumping on to the North American caster party, who also actually commentated the only Oceanic stream that we had this season, alongside Rocha Babyface, who came in on the Latin America side as well. I'm pretty sure he was casting LAIC. So definitely, and also an incredibly strong battler, 7-11 Mexico, really, really strong. So this is potentially one of the most high skilled battles that we might see. But with that said, what are you seeing on these two teams here?
Yeah, I remember from NAIC, Rocha Babyface did really well with that interesting moveset of a Fly Bravebird Talonflame, and I feel like he might actually use this Talonflame quite well against Rai's team, as there's only really the Gudra that tank, or not even can tank a Bravebird. But with the Dragon type resisting the Incinerates and the super effective Aquatails, it's the only positive matchup that Rise has against this Talonflame. So I feel like we'll be seeing a lot of that from Rocha Babyface in this set.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That Talonflame looks absolutely devastating. And as you said, even Gudra, who has some super effective damage, can still get taken out so quickly if you let Talonflame sort of build up a little bit of energy, or, even just get one flame charge off on a previous Pokemon. And to be honest, I look at Rise's team and I look at Roche's team, and I'm just kind of like, I feel like Rise doesn't have any safe Pokemon here. Like, every Pokemon is sort of staring down the barrel of quite a scary potential matchup. And so there's no Pokemon that you can consistently rely on as a safe swap, which can definitely be a little bit tricky. And you might have to make some Mega Brain big team reads, try and think about what Roche is going to try and do against Rise, and really try and build his team around that, because it's just a lack of neutral answers, and everything has at least one hard counter, which can be a little bit scary when you're in these like high stakes, high skilled battles, right?
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. I've been in similar situations before, and sometimes you just have to make a call, and I think that's what Rise is going to have to do here. Maybe say something the Gudra, hoping that there's no Registeel, given that you still have play with the Thunder Punches against the Azumarill, or hoping that Rocha Baby just doesn't bring the Azumarill and saves up the Gligar. But yeah, Rise is going to have to really try and make the right calls in this battle here.
Yeah, look, if anyone can do it, it is definitely Rise, someone who's been in a lot of these scenarios before, been in grand finals many a time in the Play Pokemon circuit. So let's see what these two top battlers do. Rise 2 Occasion, Rocha Babyface 1. Is that a sequence? Is it going to be a 2-1 to Rise to Occasion, or is that just first place and second place? We'll find out shortly. So let's jump into game number 1, back to 2 perspective, with a Gudra from Rise going into the Lickitung from Rocha Babyface. You can see the Talonflame waiting out in the wings, and actually look how good this backline is for Rocha. Talonflame Azu into the Charjabug Gligar. It is going to be pretty important here for Rise to try and win switch advantage to make sure that doesn't happen. But that's going to be a little bit tough against the Lickitung. Oh, okay. Well, look, we see the Gligar swap into Lickitung, and there's no place that Rocha is going to go except into this Azu. And so I guess the question becomes, is there an out here for Gligar? Does all of that energy that he built up, does give him her path outwards?
Yeah, I believe actually just on with one wing attack advantage, you can win the 2 shields if you bait with Aerial Ace. But with this much of an energy advantage, you might just outpace to the digs over the Ice Beams and be able to flip this matchup.
Yeah, well, he's certainly going to do his best. He's farming up plenty of energy, knowing that Azumarill is so far away from the charge attack. Goes for the Aerial Ace, but Rocha instantly no shields. Now, this could be a little bit bad for Rise, because now this Azumarill is going to be able to comfortably... actually, no! Rise is actually going to get the back-to-back Aerial Ace, and this is going to be enough to KO the Azumarill if Rocha lets it go through, and it looks like no Protect Shield being deployed here, so that Azumarill is going to go down, and now it's going to be back to Lickitung to farm up some energy, but Rise swaps into the Goodra, who has all of this energy. It says, I wasn't done with you from the lead matchup, and now going to unload this into the Lickitung, and really, doesn't quite get that second Aqua Tail off, unfortunately.
Yeah, this is an interesting play by Rise, because I assume he knows that it's a Talonflame in the back. And I thought he played, he barely hangs on and gets that final Aqua Tail. This could be quite important if the Lickitung maybe doesn't reach another Body Slam and he can get the farm down on the Charger Bug. But this Talonflame with 2 shields and that massive Incinerate damage potential, it's not looking great for Rise.
Yeah, unfortunately, Lickitung does get to a Body Slam, but you're right. Those Incinerates are seriously going to hurt in really not a lot of time left. That Goodra's Aqua Tails were going to be really important to try and weaken down the Talonflame. But, I mean, even if he had those 2 back-to-back Aqua Tails here, Rocha's hanging on to 2 Protect Shields still, so it would actually be able to protect all the way through. Now, Protect shields the resisted X-Scissor, but, we see a swap trying to catch a move into the Gligar. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. Rise trying to pull out any possible stop he can to get the W here, but unfortunately, Rocha just playing too well is going to Protect Shield this discharge, and this is going to be enough to seal the deal and take the first win against Rise to Occasion. And look, just really, really clean, really well played from Rocha. That Talonflame in the back, unfortunately, really, it was a little bit of just that Talonflame Azumarill combo lining up way too well into that Gligar Charge Bug combo. And we mentioned this earlier, how Rise sort of needs to make the call, and unfortunately didn't make the right call on this game number 1.
Yeah, that was quite unlucky from Rise. The Lickitung just outbulks the Goodra in the lead, and he couldn't get the catches. He couldn't get the alignment that he needed. And Rocha Babyface just, I mean, if I have to be honest, just played well in that game. He had the Talonflame where he wanted it. He knew how he could win that game, and that's what he did.
Yeah, and look, hey, now, Rise has potentially had the fear of Talonflame put into him, and he now has to think, okay, how am I going to deal with this thing? Because you mentioned how strong it is. Like, it's so good against so much of Rice's team, and if you aren't going to sort of save those charge attacks from Goodra for it, then maybe you sort of really have to lean into trying to take as much energy from all over the place as possible. Like a Shadow Ball from an Annihilate does incredibly well into a Talonflame if you have it on stock, but you need an ability to actually get there, and there's no clean and easy path. So I think, again, we're just going to have to jump into game number 2 and seeing what calls Rise makes and whether those calls are going to succeed. So let's go into game number 2. Whoops, I hit the wrong button. There we go. Game number 2, we have the... Oh, no. What a terrible lead for Rise to Occasion. This is so much worse. Talonflame into the Skarmory, to the swap into the Goodra, and here is the counter swap into Azumarill. I mean, this could not have started any worse for Rise to Occasion. At least now you do have the playback. You have the ability to throw these super effective Thunder Punches into Azumarill. Goodra can take 1 Ice Beam from the Azumarill, but it will not be able to take another. So let's just see whether Rise tries to, how he tries to get as much damage as possible off onto this Azumarill before it has to bring in. He's presumably going to lose this matchup eventually. It's just going to be a case of what Pokemon he brings in to deal with it in the back, because Weedle, he's going to have to deal with that Talonflame at some point.
Yeah, I must say I'm quite curious as to why Rocha Babyface did go for the Play Rough rather than the Ice Beam, because I believe the Play Rough KOs with all the bubbles. So that might have been a potential misplay. Or maybe he just wanted to secure the Ice Beam damage before a Thunder Punch lands, or to just quickly get off some damage. Oh, he's actually going to hard swap into the Talonflame here. I really like this play because now the Gudra is gone, there's nothing that's stopping this Talonflame from potentially just sweeping the whole game.
Yeah, I'd be a little bit spooked because in my head, I'm like, oh, well, now, Rise gets to bring out his best answer in Gligar into this matchup. But you're right. Like, as much as it's his best answer, it's not a good answer. Talonflame is still in an incredibly powerful position here. There's no Flame Charge. This is the double flying moveset from Roja with the Fly Brave Bird. And so, going to just keep throwing these flies. Gligar burning the Protect Shield. Talonflame still holding onto one Protect Shield, so it can quite comfortably use one here, keep throwing these Incinerates, throw another Fly. One Fly is all that Talonflame is going to need to KO this Gligar, and the switch timer isn't up yet, so it can just comfortably take this Gligar out, and it's Skarmory in the back. Now, because this is a double flying moveset Talonflame, this isn't as scary to Skarmory as a regular, sort of an alternative Talonflame would be, but, Roja is still sitting here on 3 Pokemon, including a full health Lickitung. And so this Skarmory has so much work to do. Like, you sort of just have to keep throwing Sky Attack after Sky Attack after Sky Attack and hoping that you have enough energy in the tank to sort of KO the Azumarill and the Talonflame. To be honest, I think you just need to have a Sky Attack banked for when Talonflame comes in. But there's always that potential of the Azumarill swap.
Yeah, but I'm seeing a potential win con for Rise. If he could tank 2 Body Slams, if he farms up to 100, then throws the Brave Bird to KO this Lickitung, he can potentially, I think he can reach the Sky Attack against the Talonflame by throwing a Steel Wing before the Incinerate registers. I'm not sure how healthy is the Azumarill. Can it survive a Steel Wing from the Skarmory?
Oh, I think it might just be able to... Oh, he brings in the Talonflame straight away. He gets the Sky Attack off. He's going to KO the Talonflame. It's all going to come down to whether this Azumarill can tank one Steel Wing. Because if it can't, then Rice has somehow pulled this game out. Oh! The simultaneous KO. Oh my goodness. Wait, was that simultaneous?
Wow,
or
that was
still
really close.
Whoa.
I think that might have been lag. I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I
think there was an issue with the game there.
Look, I'm seeing now that it looks like there are no other battles uploaded. So I think that's just been given a game to Rocha. Sportsmanship being played out. And so Rocha takes it out with a 2-0 scenario by the seams of what I'm seeing. Although... Yeah, because one Steel Wing should have KO'd there. So actually, that should have been a win for Rise. This is seeming very anticlimactic, but
No. I'm pretty sure one Steel Wing didn't KO, but a bubble did KO, and the
we ended up with
meant
two
Steel
Wings. Gotcha.
Time.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
do see the 2-0 play out. I'm glad we've got some world champion insight here. But yeah, thanks everyone in chat for throwing that in as well. But it looks like rise to occasion. A very, very humble man, a very sportsman-like person. Gave the win to Rocha because there's no other battles in the Google Drive, so it looks like that's what's happened here. So really well played by both battlers. I mean, like Rise had it pretty rough to say the least, and he brought it to like a one Steel Wing different, one turn different even. That's some. It sort of tells you the caliber of player that Rise to Occasion is, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Just that Azumarill being on that tiniest amount of health left when that Steel Wing came through. That must have been like in the 1 or 2 HP range. Crazy how from a Talonflame gets Skarmory lead, Rice managed to make it that close.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's sort of crazy to think about, especially when he really, like as you mentioned at the start of these battles, really didn't have an actual answer to that Talonflame. It was really just about getting as many charge stacks off as possible. And, because Rocha sort of brought in that Talonflame, Rise was able to get that one Steel Wing and then throw the Sky Attack, KO the Talonflame. And then, it really just came down to that Azu in the back and was just barely healthy enough to survive that one steel wing, to the point where with that one turn of lag, things did change. But obviously, they didn't send it in for review, but it would have been reviewed with that one turn lag as well. And we were playing with def wins being distributed in this tournament. So just really well played from Rosha, and of course really well played from Rise. But I think it is time. Well, let's bring in our other two world champions. It's Axon and Dancing Rob to sort of talk about what we've got here. But then we will have a look at the review of the results so we can see who makes it on to week number 2 in the Clash of the Casters. Axon, Dancing Rob, welcome back in. We now have the world champion trio reunited at once. But how, I guess just vibe check, how have these battles been? We've seen 11 matchups with casters from all around the world, every single region on the planet, sort of making a showing, using some, relatively unique picks here or there, and also trying to do their regions proud. I mean, Axon, I'll start with you. What's sort of been your take off of this event so far?
Yeah, I was very interested to see how Goodra would do at the start of this tournament. It seems like a lot of Goodras did end up kind of coming up short. I found myself that it is a little bit underwhelming with some of these charge moves not doing as much damage. But Rise, obviously in that last game, trying to make the most out of it. Even in those neutral matches, it has play. But a lot of interesting teams too. We saw a Whimsicott, a lot of fire types, a lot of Feraligatr, both shadow and non-shadow. It seems like the non-shadow was actually pretty common today. So just seeing all these unique teams, these casters, obviously, they've been watching the game for so long, seeing from the sidelines, what is a good team? How do I want to play this out if I were to be on the spotlight for myself? And it seems like seeing their meta read here, especially before Worlds, is it's pretty helpful here. Just see what is the meta.
Yeah, you're right. Because again, we mentioned this at the start of the stream, there haven't been very many opportunities to see what the meta actually is. And so this is sort of a bit of an insight into, a collection of 24 casters' views on what the meta currently looks like, what can perform well, and seeing how it does play out in action. Weedle, I mean, obviously we just casted about half of this tournament together, but what's your sort of take on this tournament week 1?
Yeah, I've enjoyed seeing all of the teams, just like Axel mentioned before. Not only, the meta picks that they've had chosen, but also the off-meta picks like that Talonflame we saw in that last battle, or some of the, as Axel mentioned, the Whimsicott. So, it just shows that the casters don't only perform well in general, but also with these off-meta and spicy picks, and I really like seeing that.
Yeah, I think Talonflame is one of the picks that, I don't know if Roche is the only one who used it in the entire tournament, but we sort of pretty much saw every team here almost, so it sort of seems like that's the case. And it did really well. And it's sort of a Pokemon a little bit like Bastiodon, I think, in that it's something that Caleb talks about a whole lot, in that people aren't prepared for Bastiodon, and so they build teams that can be quite weak to Bastiodon. And that happens at EUIC, it happens in so many tournaments before that, in that there's these Pokemon that you just aren't necessarily building your team thinking about, or you go, I know I'm weak to that Pokemon, but I'm unlikely to see Talonflame. But when you have to face it, it can be really devastating. And in the World Championships, you've only got 2 matches to lose. It's double elimination. And so you've really got to be as ready as you can be for any scenario. And so Rosha really sort of using that to his advantage for sure. But Rob, what about you? Clash of the Casters, week 1, under wraps. We've got 3 rounds in, 60% of the way through this tournament. What are you thinking?
I think we've seen pretty well that casters from every region have showed us some top battles, and they're all some very elite battlers. Of course, you've only shown the best ones. And despite missing some Whalemare action, I'm very curious how the meta will be condensed, especially when we're looking at the week 2, where I think you mentioned only those that really advanced within the first 3 rounds are actually playing against each other. So especially these normal Feraligatrs, shadow Feraligatrs, and all these nuances that might be very interesting towards Worlds. I am very curious about to see, and if I were any one of you, I would definitely be watching next week as well.
Yeah, I really think that Inadequance is in shambles after this stream, just based on how many non-shadow Feraligatrs really sort of came out to play. Seemed almost like the favorite as opposed to regular shadow Feraligatr. We might have some team usage graphics in next week's stream. But yeah, essentially everyone has played out the full 5-round Swiss tournament. But obviously, as Swiss tournaments go, as soon as you drop 2 matches, you are sort of no longer in contention for that number 1 spot and that ability to take home the first place with the $100 USD prize, just to sort of sweeten the pot a little bit. So I'm going to pull up the results now. We've got pretty much everyone on the left-hand side of the screen is still in it to win it. And anyone on the right-hand side has lost too many battles and unfortunately will not progress. So we're left with 3 battlers who are undefeated. HomeSliceHenry, Inadequance, and Rocha Babyface. Not only 3-0 in matches, but taking her 9-0s in battles as well. Now, there was a little bit of confusion at the start of this tournament, I should mention, in that Dracoviz only let you submit 2-0s. They didn't let you submit 3-0s. So some battles only played out 2, some only played out 3. But for the purpose of this leaderboard, we've just counted every 2-0 as a 3-0. For the whole tournament. So, we've got those 3 in that top spot, but also hanging on with a 2-1 result. We have No Mimi 15, who we saw their 1 loss to Sophtoph, actually. We also saw Fishy Legs 2, their 1 loss to Debbiepebble. Thaliwi, Koning Lionheart, who we didn't see actually play in this stream, partially because they didn't upload their footage, but partially because, there was a lot of battles to fit in with only 1 caster perspectives. And if I didn't mention at the start, running the little algorithm thing, I put priority on everyone who uploaded their footage. So we also missed out on Lou the Pikachu from this stream, but still played out all 5 rounds as well. We've also got LNDsAureo, who we saw their battles against EwokPadawan at the very start of the stream. Rise to Occasion may have lost to Rocha Babyface, but still in it to win it after winning their other 2 matches. Sophtoph still in, TzSpenx still in, and Adelian all still in as well. But of course, massive thank you to everyone on the right-hand side of the screen who are, obviously without these guys, wouldn't be as cool of a tournament. TzSpenx, AlphaFeeb, CalebPeng, EwokPadawan, Lundberger, NiteTimeClasher, this Steve guy, debbiepebble, DeFi 250, TomahawkUK, Lou the Pikachu, and ZoeTwoDots. So we won't be seeing their battles next week, but stay tuned for some. I know a few of these battlers, myself included, are going to be putting some recaps together of their full tournament runs. So stay tuned for that in the next coming week, as that's going to be pretty cool. But unfortunately, guys, this is confirmation that we will not see Welmer battles in the week 2 stream. I'm sorry.
This is very disappointing.
Yeah. I will say, I brought Welmer. I want to say every game against in a battles against Inadequance. I should have won one of them, but it was still going to be a 2-1 defeat for sure. So Inadequance, very strong battler. But I guess that's just self-plug time. I mean, stay tuned to youtube.com/PvPSteve for some Welmer battles coming up shortly. But yeah, as mentioned, we do have a week 2 stream. Actually, I'll bring up the little thingo as well. Actually, ignore. I probably should have turned the timer off, to be honest. And oh wait, there's music playing. Apologies. Boop. Okay, no more music. Sorry about that. But we've got week 2 coming up next. It's Sunday, not Saturday, for most of you in the US and the in the Americas and Europe. It is going to be the Monday for us in the Oceanic region, but it's going to be starting 1 hour earlier at 1 p.m. ET as opposed to 2 p.m. ET. And we're going to have a mostly different trio of world champion casters with Speediest Chief and Dunebug, the Silpharina world champions, joining Itzaxon, who's going to be back for another week. But of course, that brings us back to, these absolutely beautiful human beings. I really loved having you 3 here to cast this first week of the Clash of the Casters tournament. This has been a lot of fun for me, seeing all of these. I sort of talk about this in my Clash of the Champions series quite a bit, and it's almost like taking all of these action figures and sort of, fighting them against each other. And it's not something you get to see very often. Sometimes at the, for example, IC streams, you do see a little bit of caster battles, but it's often inter-region. Like, it's often CalebPeng versus EwokPadawan facing each other sort of on the regular. And so it's nice to sort of see these cross-region competitions as well. Sort of try and get some region domination. I think we only have 1 Oceanic battler left in contention for the W, but I'll be rooting for Fishy Legs as we go into next week's battles. But with that said, again, thank you to itzaxon, Emmy Weedle, and Dancing Rob for coming on to cast. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here, and I'm hoping it's not the last of your casting regimes going into the future. Really cool to have some world champion talent. But with that said, I'll ask you to sort of, plug yourselves, of course, as well. But I do want to not forget two things. Number one, massive thank you to all of the casters for jumping in on this tournament. I mean, they've sort of spent their own time doing these battles there's not that much at stake. Like, first place is going to get 100 USD, but it's very easy to just sort of ignore it as it's a lot of effort. And it is. And so I really appreciate everyone for coming in, doing 5 sets of battles across this tournament and making this event what it is. Because if we didn't have 24 casters here, it wouldn't be as cool as it might have been otherwise. And the other important thank you is to DracoViz for not only putting together this stream overlay graphics that we've used today, but also for putting together that really cool announcement graphic for the Clash of the Casters. So that's, if it was left to me, I'd be putting something on MS Paint out there. And look, it wouldn't be as cool, but it is what it is. But with all of that said, I think that's all of the thank yous, other than thank you everyone for coming out and watching this stream. So as a final send-off, Axon, tell us sort of, where we can find you, what if you've got anything coming up as well, what you're looking forward to. I mean, I know one thing that there's literally all 4 of us are going to be looking forward to in about 3 weeks' time. But
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having us once again, Steve. I stream Pokemon Go PvP at twitch.tv/itzaxon basically every day. So if you want to see more Pokemon Go PvP content, make sure to check me out there. Also have a YouTube channel now. So if you want to see videos, if you can't catch the live streams, make sure to check me out there. And also I will be coming on next week, as Steve said, for the part 2 of this championship tournament. See which caster is the best. And also, Worlds is coming up in just a couple weeks. Very excited for that. Super excited to see you guys there. And hopefully I do at least as well as some of these casters did today.
Yeah, look, Axon, definitely one of the best Pokemon Go streamers of all time. And one of the best budding YouTubers as well. So definitely do check him out. If you're watching the YouTube VOD of this stream, the links will all be in the description as well. Not as easy to do that on Twitch, but I didn't set up Nightbot commands, so you know where to find him. It's Axon. If you know me, you definitely know it's Axon. But thanks for coming on. Emmy Weedle also coming on, and some pretty hopefully some strats to steal coming up onto the World Championships as well. Any final words where we can find you if you've got anything coming up too?
Yeah, no, just thank you for having me here, and also thank you to you for organizing this whole thing. You said thanks to all the casters and us, but I think nobody said thank you to you for organizing this whole thing. So I'll say it. Thanks, Steve. And yeah, I look forward to watching the battles next week.
Yeah, for sure. And Emmy Weedle, the X link is going to be in the description down below as well. Obviously, if you're not following the world champion, what are you doing? And also, may as well follow the Twitch account. I mean, are we thinking about Twitch streams going forward, Emmy Weedle? Because I've hit the follow button anyway.
I mean, school is a thing. I still have that, sadly. So it's a bit too much for now, at least. But you never know.
So, fair enough. Leave doors open, but school, prioritizing school, that's definitely something that can get some respect. So a shout out. But also, yeah, I appreciate it. And Rob, of course, one of the 3rd world champion, joining us here. Where can we find you? Anything coming up? Yada yada.
You can find me on Twitter at RobDancing and also on Twitch at DancingRob. And I actually want to make a return to Twitch streaming in autumn.
Yes!
So
Let's go! You heard
I've done it a bit like 1.5 years ago, but it got slacking, and now I should be able to find the time again. And I'm enjoying it.
Oh, awesome. We'll definitely go and follow Dancing Rob over on Twitch as well. I'll look forward to as many world champion Twitch streams as possible, And, Emmy Weedle, also, you're obviously welcome to sort of duo streams and all else coming on for casting and such. It doesn't need to be regular streaming as well. Always just good to see you. And so, yeah, again, just to recap, really appreciate all three of you coming on, because it's been a long stream, especially for some of your casting debuts. Usually it's not quite so long, but hey, we had a lot of casters to show off and a lot of really good battles, except for, someone who didn't bring Wailmer, so apologies. But yeah, with that said, I think that's all we've got to say here. So thanks again for everyone who's come out to watch, whether it's here during the Twitch stream, whether it's later on in the YouTube VOD. Really appreciate it all the same. But with that said, I guess I'll throw the YouTube outro on it. I haven't decided if I was gonna stick the two streams together for one 7-hour video, or if I'm just gonna upload it as week 1 or week 2. But either way, I'll say it anyway. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, especially that subscribe one, and I'll see you in the next one. Week 2, baby. But yeah, we'll raid off into Wiggly Woo. And yeah, I can't say it enough. It's so cool to sort of, have had all three of these guys not only grace us with their presence, but do such an amazing job casting as well. So very appreciative to have the world champ difference 3 times over on this stream. And yeah, look forward to seeing Axon, Speedy, and Dune do it again next week as well. But with that said, we'll raid off. So see everyone a bit later, guys.